please welcome my guest for today, Taroh.
I'm sorry, I brought my bad luck over to your stream.
Oh no, it's fine. Scuff is a inevitability. I actually, during one of my very first shows, I had a bit of an opening monologue, and it was embrace the scuff, love the scuff, because scuff is going to happen. You just need to work through it.
It happens a lot for me.
Oh yeah, it happens for everyone. Before starting Vtuber Talk, I did a lot of work in live events, conventions, some concerts, and no matter what you do, no matter how long you've been doing it, there will always be scuff. It's just a matter of how do you handle the scuff and how much of the scuff does the audience see. Because if the audience doesn't know something went wrong, then nothing went wrong.
Exactly.
But yes, Taroh, welcome on in. I'm sure that most of the people in chat right now are already familiar with who you are, but for those who aren't, if you could introduce yourself.
Let's do the general introduction, guys. Come on and chat. Z's in chat. Hello, my name is Taroh. I'm your virtual elephant mama and also your personal dreamer. If you're having bad dreams, you put your head on my lap, I will pet your head and take them away to replace with happier dreams. It's lovely to meet you.
A wonderful, wonderful intro indeed, one that I've heard several times myself, having been to many of your streams. I was mentioning the other day, I can't remember exactly who rated me into you for the first time. It had to have been one of my previous guests. That's how I find a lot of my guests, frankly, just, one into another, just sort of the social networking of VTubers in that regard. And plus it's sort of like a recommendation of, all right, I've already talked with someone, I know that they're really cool, and if they're comfortable enough to raid into someone else's channel, that's already a baseline vote of confidence. And sure enough, I was in your chat for just a couple minutes. I was like, all right, I need to keep an eye on Taroh. I definitely want to have her on the show sometime. So I'm very glad that we were able to schedule things today, because usually I start the show talking about something that my guest has been playing in the past week, something from one of their recent streams. I usually tune in, especially during that week, to make sure that if there's any recent inside jokes that I can play off of, that I'm aware of them. And I didn't get that this week because you actually haven't streamed in the past week because you've been very busy with real life. It's all positive stuff. It's work-related stuff. Nothing has gone wrong. And actually, the last time you did stream, you said, just so you know, everyone, my schedule's gonna be a bit on and off in the coming weeks, so not a shocker, but a slight difference for me from my usual protocol, I suppose. So thank you so much for taking one of your few days off to be here and spend it with me. I really do appreciate it.
No, not at all. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I guess we might as well cover, pun half intended, the elephant in the room of, since I mentioned you've been very busy with work, your work, and it's something that you've been very open with on your channel, you actually do work as a psychiatric nurse.
I do, yes. Yeah.
So how does one get into that line of work? That's a very specific profession, and it's one that you have to have the drive and passion for. You don't just fall into that line of work. So
no.
Where did that originate for you?
For me, I don't know. For me, I'll be honest, it's probably true crime. I'm fascinated by I was really fascinated by criminals, but I think that's become like a meme of like females over the last few years, is like they love true crime, which is true. But I also have a long history of mental health within my family, and that always made me curious about it. So yeah.
By the way, I did miss a couple of early follows. Thank you so much, Chikitsune and the Mad Hazard. I like that name. That's a good one.
My moderators.
Oh, yay! Welcome on in, and VVT. Thank you so much for the follows. Do you recall?
Wife.
Oh, hey, there we go. So, if true crime was sort of the gateway there for you, was there a particular true crime show that really, hooked you in, or was it something that just you started with one, and even if that wasn't necessarily the one that really dragged you into the rabbit hole, so to speak, that over time it was just a cumulative thing?
Generally, I think it was an accumulative thing, but there wasn't really shows in the UK that were focused on crime and like telling true crime. Like in America, I think you guys had like these shows based around like unsolved cases and stuff. We didn't really have that here. We had a show on the BBC called Crime Watch, If that is, correct me if I'm wrong, if someone in chat knows what I'm talking about. But it was a show where they would show cases that were currently being investigated and hadn't been solved yet. And I remember watching that all the time. And it especially got interesting because I come from a town where there was an unsolved murder for about 30 years.
Oh my.
And that show decided to take it and recreate. I remember them filming it in my hometown because they had to completely redecorate the street like the 70s.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that they went to that type of length of actually adjusting the local towns. I would have thought, okay, you do it on a film set, or you just use the town as it is and maybe find a couple different areas that haven't necessarily been renovated, go to a couple older buildings or historic sites. But they actually did not a facelift on the town, but just sort of a reversion.
Yeah, just on that kind of block, that kind of neighborhood. They asked residents to like move their cars, and they replaced it with like cars from the 70s. And my town is very old looking, so it hasn't changed a whole lot. So they were able to film it relatively easy. They just had to take down a few signs and stuff. And I remember that being a big case because my family were actually friends with the girl that was murdered.
Oh my goodness.
And so I remember hearing about the case when I was really, really young. And yeah, when it got older, they decided to reopen the case because of some new finds, and they filmed it in my town. And I remember right after that, they finally found the guy. And I just had this weird fascination of like, I remember like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, the usual ones. And I was like, what makes them actually do this stuff? And that's kind of what started it.
Okay, that's really interesting. And I suppose it makes sense that you had that personal connection, albeit through not the best of circumstances, it being, particularly if it was a family friend. Certainly glad to hear that they were able to get that closure and solve the case, even if it was a little bit late. And it is sort of cool that whether it be the publicity of the show or just the renewed interest, that it makes you wonder how many unsolved crimes wound up being solved because of true crime shows like that help shine a spotlight and bring eyes onto it. And maybe it could be somebody who sees the show and recognizes, oh, wait a minute, I was there 30 years ago. I never knew a crime happened, but I remember seeing a thing there. And just, it gives that publicity to potentially find more evidence, and that it then actually helps those cases in addition to just being historical documentation of them.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's really interesting to like look into like a lot of them. It's their backstories. You kind of find there's a lot of similarities in backstories for the people that commit these crimes. But working in the field now, and especially working in forensics at the moment, I don't know, it doesn't always have to be that tragic backstory. Unfortunately, some people just, it's unfortunate circumstances that just led them to be where they ended up.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned forensics, so I am not someone in that field, obviously. When I think of psychology for that, I don't necessarily think forensics. When I think forensics, I think of more of the investigative side. Whereas when I think of the psychiatric part of it, I see that as rehabilitation or, I suppose, care while under detention. But I suppose that the psychology of it all does come into the forensics, because if you're able to get into the mind of a suspect, that you are then able to investigate more thoroughly. So did you get into it specifically with the interest of trying to solve the cases, or was it more of the, like I said, rehabilitation, or was it both?
It was more of the rehabilitation, but I guess you could say it was a little bit of both. But the investigative part, I knew that was going to be police and all that stuff, and like detectives. That area is not really an interest for me. For me, it was more getting to know the actual person who committed the crime. And I know that's a lot of people will be like, why would you give them that time of day? But in a way, it was just a morbid curiosity on my own part that got me interested in forensics, and particularly just in psychiatry altogether. I like to kind of know how the head ticks. I really find that stuff interesting, and a lot of these people that do end up in a forensic unit a lot of people think it's really easy for them because it's like, oh, you're not going to prison, you're just being sent to a hospital. But it is still very fucking strict in a hospital. You're still like contained to a room and only let out for meals and all that kind of stuff. It's still, if you're in a high secure area, it's still like a prison, just you're receiving a lot more medical focused care.
Mm-hmm. So, for my own clarification, because like I said, I'm not in the field and my mental definitions for these terms could very well be off. Is forensics part of your job as a psychiatric nurse, or is that a area of interest but not part of your job?
It's an area of interest, and at the moment I am in a forensic uni, but at the moment I'm in low secure. So you can go into psychiatry and you can go to acute, which is just a general kind of hospital ward where patients live there for periods of assessment. You can work in community, in which you go to people who aren't at the stage of being hospitalized, but they can go, like you go to their house and it's their safe place. I think that's especially more common in like social phobias and agoraphobias and such, but also older people who just need that extra bit of help. I've noticed when I did community, it was a lot of older people. So yeah, it ranges. It really depends on the severity, but forensics is its own kind of area of psychiatry.
So I guess this means that the mental definition I have of forensics is probably incorrect in that case. That it's not, when I think forensics, like I said, I generally think of it as investigation, but if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, that it is too narrow of a definition.
Yeah, with forensics, during the investigation process, they're generally in prison. We still have cases where they're going through the court system. We still have that in our area. But at the point that I'm working in, as I said, it's low secure. They've already been in the system for about 10, 20 years. They've already been in the system for a long time. They've been in prison. And this is more at the stage where we're trying to get them to a point where they can go back out into the community. For a lot of them, if their cases are entirely severe, they will generally stay in high to medium secure. It really depends on the person.
And you mentioned that you're in low secure right now. Have you done work in medium or high before, or just low for now?
Not at the moment, no. With high secure facilities, the way that it's understood to me, I've spoken with, like, I have colleagues who have worked in high secure and they came to low secure after like so many years. And in high secure areas, they generally keep the staffing between like family and close friends. So you'll find that a lot of the staff will be like cousins or mother, daughter, father, son kind of setups, because it keeps the anonymity in there. You're not like bringing in lots of different outside people. You're keeping it to a very tight-knit kind of community in itself, so the information stays confidential.
That makes sense. I don't usually get into sort of deep dives of people's careers when they're on my show, but your line of work is particularly unique, and it's something that just I recognize that I don't have a full grasp of, nor do I think that the average person fully understands, because it is an area of particular specialty. So whenever I have guests that have something really unique like that, I always like to just learn a bit for myself, because I know I don't know everything, and if I get an expert, I'm not going to make the whole show about it, but I'm always really curious about those sorts of things. Do you think that I was going to ask if you think you would ever want to do medium or high secure, but since you just said that that's usually kept insular, that's probably not something that you would necessarily be able to do anyway. So I suppose I would spin it to say, having done the work now for a couple of years, and you're still doing your residencies, which is to say that you, I guess I should let you do it. Can you describe for the layman what a residency is?
So a residency, I think, is the American term. In the UK, we just call it a placement. And so when you're taking part in any sort of medical or education study, for example, if you want to be a teacher, if you want to be a doctor, a pharmacist, all that kind of thing, you generally do a placement. And particularly for nurses and doctors, we go through 3 or 4 placements a year in which we go into a clinical setting and we're able to learn how the clinical practice works, how that environment works, and also just develop our own skills in a more hands-on basis. Rather than reading books, we're actually getting in on the action literally from day one that we start our courses.
Yeah, and usually, at least in the U.S., because I obviously have not gone through it myself, but I have a couple family members and friends who are in the medical field, and usually they go through multiple placements over the course of their education. That they will be at a given facility for 6 to 12 months, then be moved to a different one, and then once they've completed their education, then they get a job at a single facility, and then it's going to be more long term. How many different facilities have you had placements at?
Well, the placement period over here is actually a lot shorter. It's only about 6 weeks, 6 to
Oh,
7
okay.
weeks for placements, apart from your very last one, which is 12 plus, because that's where you're put into the role of like a senior charge nurse or a manager position.
Okay, that might have actually been me misremembering, because the 6 to 12, maybe I was thinking weeks and not months. Because now that you say it, that actually does
That
make a lot
seems
more
more
sense. So I'm
accurate.
probably just wrong here.
Otherwise, if it was a bunch of 12 months placement, she's spending your entire year in one place, which I don't know, maybe it is differently in America. I really don't know. But yeah, for us it's about 6 odd weeks. I've done, let me see, I've been quite lucky. I've gotten a good variety. I've got forensics, acute inpatient, community care. I've done 2 different care homes. One is just a general kind of care residence, and the other was an all-male unit for ARBD patients, which is alcohol-related brain damage. So a lot of them are ex-drinkers with really bad kind of repercussions from their years of drinking. A lot of it can come through as a personality disorder or like dementia or such, but it isn't actually. It's ARBD. Yeah, I've done quite a few areas. I've done over 65s, all that kind of thing.
Are there any that were particularly enjoyable for you, especially if there was one that you weren't sure about going in, but then realized, oh, wow, I actually have either an interest, or that just in general, maybe one that you might not have been looking forward to so much wound up better than expected?
Oh, for sure. I didn't actually consider community for a long time, and I genuinely loved it when I went to do a community. So it's the routine more than anything. I loved that it was a 9 to 5, but it was, I don't know, I liked that I had, like, in the mornings you have set clinics, so I'd know, like, on a Thursday morning I would be doing nothing but injections for like 2 hours, and on a Wednesday morning I'd be taking bloods all morning, and then in the afternoon I could go see patients. It was a good variety of things that you got to do.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I forgot to say this earlier on, folks. If there's any issues with Taro's audio or mine, if the BGM's too loud, please let me know. I think I've got the levels pretty good, but sometimes the output on Twitch isn't always what I hear on my end.
Yeah.
So, of the placements that you've had, is there one that has been your favorite?
Yeah, that community one was definitely, it was a shame because that was the one that got cut short with COVID.
Oh no!
And I was so heartbroken.
Oh.
But I was there, I started there on my birthday. So the second day was my birthday, and they actually got me a little cake on my second day there. And I was like,
Aww.
oh, thank you. I loved it.
That's so nice.
Yeah, so there are forensics are the 2 that I'm really considering.
And as we mentioned earlier, part of the reason that you haven't been able to stream a bunch lately is because you're in a bit of a busy area. You have exams coming up soon, I believe.
Yeah, so I managed to do an assessment. So I had an assessment this week that I had to do. And then going back now, I'll have a bit more free time because I'm going back to just kind of general classes. So I only have like a day and a half of classes in the week. But those are preparing for 3 more assessments that I have, one of which is a paper, and the other 2 are full-on presentations.
Now, are these presentations that you get to choose the topic, or is it an assigned topic?
For one of them, I get to choose, which I'm looking forward to.
If you're comfortable saying, what is the topic that you chose?
I'll keep it kind of general. I'm going to be discussing electroconvulsive therapy for use in patients who have like depression and anxiety disorders.
Okay, for the layman, which is to say me, because electroconvulsive therapy, that I hear electro, so I think shock therapy. I suppose that would be the layman term for it. Yep.
It used to be called electric shock therapy back in the day, but now it's electroconvulsive therapy. So, but I've been to ECT we call it for short. I've been to it. and I've taken part in having patients set up for it. The movies make it look so crazy. Movies make it look insane with like flailing around and stuff, but it's nothing like that.
That's super fascinating to me. Sorry, I'm just sort of like mentally processing, like, okay, because
Not at
like you said, you
all.
see that type of thing in movies, and obviously it's
Oh.
heavily dramatized.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and I have zero basis of knowledge of how that would work or the benefits therein, but it's.
Mm.
I'm glad to know that there are actual medical benefits, and that it is something that is being explored in a humane way.
Yes. I remember we had a patient so I had patients who went for like depression and anxiety disorders, which is why I chose that. But we also had a woman who had very severe eating disorders for years. I probably should put trigger warnings for my job, by the way, guys, just so you guys in chat are aware. But we had a woman who had really bad eating disorders over many years, and she refused to eat at all, to the point getting her out of bed we needed 2 people because she was like a rag doll. It was just impossible to get her out of bed. She had no strength, and we put her forward for ECT, so she would go once a week, and it like 2-3 weeks later she was asking for seconds. It's insane how it works.
Wow. And like I said, it's obviously a complex process, and I don't want to get too much in the nitty gritty because I do want to talk about other things, but it's super cool to know that that's an area, like I said, one that's being used in humane ways and seeing those types of benefits, and especially for you to see that type of transformation over such a short period, because 2 weeks can sound like a lot, but in medical terms, 2 weeks is a blink of an eye. That's nothing.
That's nothing. That I just
really
did a
good.
6-week placement and it was done in 2 seconds.
That's really great. That's really great.
No, well, if it's any benefit, like in the movies and stuff, as I said, they're freaking out and all that stuff. They put the person under, they're unconscious through it, and we have entire teams present. We have their doctor, we have anestheticians, we have their assistants, we have 2 nurses on duty, and then obviously if there's a student in the room, they're there to help as well. Like, we still have to help, we still have to be at the forefront of your care. And so the person will go under, and it's basically triggering a seizure. That's all it is. So you see the seizure kind of go from head to toe, and once the toe stops moving, you stop counting the length of the seizure. So it's from the length that the toe starts moving to the toe stops. And that's it. It's done within, like, setup included, probably about 10 minutes.
Wow. Now, also just that little nugget there of how you count seizure of based on the toe. I've never thought about, all right, how does one measure something like that before? But that makes sense. So you say it's like,
it's really weird, isn't it?
That's logical. Yeah, I can see how they wind up with that. Okay.
Yes, you have to take your shoes and socks off. So make sure you're wearing decent socks if you go for ECT, guys.
I love getting to learn about stuff like this because obviously just everyone has their own story, everyone has their own interests, and whenever I get to have a guest on, I get to learn about the things that they're really passionate about or that makes them unique and different. And I can certainly say I've never had this type of conversation in over 50 episodes, so it's really cool to sort of hear. And obviously I know this is only scratching the surface, that you have years and years and years of education going into this, and obviously that this is not super comprehensive, but even being able to learn these little tidbits here and there, it's just super fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and I think I like talking about it. I don't generally go a lot in depth anymore, but I do enjoy talking about things that I've seen where there are misconceptions, because I like to be able, in my chat, thankfully, or my community is very open to discussing mental health and the treatment methods, and I like being able to tell people how it's actually done, rather than don't take what the media say is foolproof, guys.
And that's why I phrase a lot of things of, to my understanding and from what I know, and knowing that I am not an expert, because I recognize that there's probably a lot of misconceptions that I have. And it's really great to be able to clear those up. Now, another thing I don't actually get into super often is people's VTuber designs and models, but connecting a couple of dots here. you, as you mentioned, are a dream eater.
Yes.
Do you think that the interest in dreams and that flavoring for the persona of Taroh there sort of stems from your work in psychiatry and forensics?
In a way, definitely. Again, it's to do with your psyche, and that's why I've always had an interest in like dream interpretation and like astrology and stuff. To me, it's just another way of looking at personality. Do I believe it? Sometimes, probably not a lot, but to me, it's fun. And like, I just want to clear that up because people are like, how can you be a nurse and follow science, but then follow like astrology and stuff? Like, to me, it's fun, it's interesting, and it's just another way to look at a person's personality.
Yeah, that and I think that it's very good to be able to mentally delineate of, I understand what science is, I understand where facts come into play, but I also can, like you said, have fun with something and just sort of use that as a different vantage point to explore, but know, obviously, to take it with a grain of salt.
Yes, exactly.
So we were talking earlier in the week, and the subject of anime came up. It's something that I get to talk with about half of my guests with. But you mentioned a particular title, and once again, connecting a couple dots here, it's not true crime by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly a crime-related show with a very interesting psychology behind the main character and several others. Death Note is a series that we both really enjoy. That for me, it was one of the first anime I ever saw subtitled, and it was one of the first non-traditional shonen manga that I read. That I suppose it's still technically a shonen, but it was one of the first that I read that wasn't something like Yu-Gi-Oh or Dragon Ball Z, something like that. That it was not a combat based one, that it's a dialogue, it's that thriller type, and that genre of, the way I phrase it is, I like smart characters doing smart things, and I like dialogue driven shows. So Death Note definitely appeals to me in that regard. Obviously it is one of the most well-known series of all time, that even now it's on the My Anime list, top ranked charts, really high up there. For you, do you remember how you actually got introduced to Death Note and what about it really sort of grabbed you at first?
I just realized the connection between Death Note and why I got into my job. At this very moment, I have just realized the connection.
Hooray, I'm able to help connect dots.
I didn't realize, oh no. Is this why I was Team Keyta? Okay, yes, that's why my dog is named Keyta. I don't know, I don't actually remember when I got into it, to be honest. It was one of those, because my first anime back in the day was Sakura Taisen, which was originally a Sega game. I remember I got like everyone in the UK, their dad knew a guy who could get DVDs back in the day, and I got Sakura Taisen and Basilisk Koga Ninpocho, and they were my first Japanese anime. Death Note, I don't know, I think I just heard about it because it was popular, and I was like, I'm curious about this, and then I watched it, and I just absolutely loved it. And I usually don't do dialogue heavy shows, so I was quite surprised, but I really loved it.
I remember for me, it was a friend who loaned me the first volume of the manga. It was like, I think you'll really like this series. And I read the first chapter and I'm like, wow, this is incredibly dark and grim and not the usual. And just, it was the type of thing that I had to get over a bit of a hump of like, okay, this is just much darker than my usual fare, but it was the dialogue, like I said, that the cat and mouse game of L and Light, just the logic and thinking 3 steps ahead of the other, but the other person is thinking 4 steps ahead, and the person who loses is the one that only thinks 2 steps ahead. And just having those inner monologues and reading through it really got me. And the series as a whole is one that has really stuck with me of just it. I think its writing is really, really good. And I know there's a lot of debate in the community of, oh, things went downhill after L. And by the way, Statute of Limitations is up. That series has been out for a long time. You're going to have to deal with spoilers here, folks. Sorry.
I am of a weird minority in the fan base,
Mhm.
in which I prefer Nier over L.
Okay, because I'm in the camp of I like both equally for different reasons. That I think L will always hold a special place for a lot of people. One, because he's in a larger portion of the series than Nier, and I think that by virtue of that and his dealings with light, that L's personality gets to shine through a lot more than Nier ever has the chance to. But I see them as two very different people, even if they both occupy the role of antagonist to light. That their role is the same, but they are very, very different people in their mannerisms and in their methodology. And part of that comes into play in the end game of Nier saying, I did something that I don't think L would ever do because of how he works, and this is how I won.
Yeah, I feel like Nier is a bit more open to putting in the team effort, and he's open to like addressing his own issues and like addressing his own faults, whereas I feel like L was a little bit too high and mighty sometimes. Like, I get it, you're older and like all that stuff, but I just find it, I don't know, I just didn't find him as interesting as Nier and Mello. But I think it's because it was described that Nier and Mello were like two versions of L. Like, they both inhabit different sides of L, whereas Mello is more the overconfident kind of guy. Nier is the one who is open to criticism and thinking over his own actions and faults.
Yeah, that they're definitely two aspects of L, sort of separated and then magnified in their own right.
Yeah, I liked their arc, and I hate that the two of them get so much hate from the community.
Yeah,
but then Matt shows up for 3 seconds, and
everyone loves Matt.
Like, what the fuck?
I honestly forgot what Matt's name was until I saw a bunch of people like being head over heels for him. I was like, oh yeah, I guess he was around in a couple of scenes.
Yeah, like, people just immediately fell for him, and it's like, what, because he looks like light but a bit edgier? Calm down.
Yeah. Conel Senark, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, in the chat says that we may be divided on L or Nier, but we can all unite on that fact that the Netflix adaptation and just how it just wasn't it.
There's a Netflix adaptation? I didn't know that.
There was a Netflix adaptation. I haven't.
Doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. No,
oh,
I don't
yes,
know
that's right. Certainly not. But
they changed it so much.
I haven't actually been able to bring myself to see it because I've heard that it's, like was said, not it. The one thing that has me wanting to go look it up though is that I've heard that Willem Dafoe does very well as Ryuk, and honestly, that's the one thing that just looking at the cast, it was like, Willem Dafoe has the right voice. I can't think of a better English-speaking actor.
That was the one casting choice I think everyone was on board with.
Yeah, just sometimes there's that one thing that even if it's not enough to salvage the film or the project, that you can look at it and say, all right, they did this one thing right.
Yeah.
And but I saw a clip of when Ryu first reveals himself to Light, and that Light is just screaming like crazy. And having seen that, that was what made it so I was like, okay, I don't know if I could watch an hour and a half of this.
Zero charisma.
Oh, that's
how
unfortunate.
they can play a big part of Light's character and how he gets away with shit is his charisma.
That's very true.
You need to have that in him. I hate it.
Did you ever see the Japanese live action films where they did two that condensed things and had a different ending, but then there was also L's spin-off film?
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes of all time comes from that movie. But I grew up I was obsessed with the manga. And I told you before, Death Note has a weird connection to my family.
Yes, that's right. And you didn't tell me what it was because I said I wanted to wait until we were on the air. So please, what is this connection?
So I really loved the manga. And my younger sister, when she was really young, I got her into the anime series. It was one of her first anime when she was really young. And then, so I remember she was sleeping one night and she just started laughing and saying she was Kira in her sleep. It was the funniest shit. I will still bring that up
Uh,
to this day.
uh,
Um, with and then my dad, he actually is a big fan of the live action movies.
oh,
He's a really big fan of live action movies. So the three of us kind of connected through Death Note. We became really, really close because of that weird connection.
super cool. Just
Yeah.
finding, you know, a shared interest or series or book or something and being able to bond with family over that. For me, Death Note was not it. I remember I gave the first volume to my father because I was like, I think you'll like this writing. And he read and he was like, it's just too dark for me. That the overall premise, like I said, I sort of had to get over that mental hump of saying the premise is dark and I'm not super into that, but I love the dialogue and the characters so much, and that's what did it for me. That he just wasn't able to get over the premise. It was like, not for me, sorry. So wasn't able to do that one, but we've had several others that, you know, my father and I have shared, or that my siblings and I have shared. So it's neat to know that Death Note, while it couldn't be that for me, was able to be that for you and your siblings and your parents as well. That's awesome.
That was a big connector for us with Death Note, which is really weird.
And it sounds like you all liked different representations of it too, because you mentioned your father liked the live action. You showed your sister the anime, and that for you it was mainly the manga.
Yeah, I have the big my dad actually for my birthday one year got me the big Death Notes collector's edition, the big pack of the manga, which came with the volume 13, quote unquote, which is like the dark,
I got that
L
one.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of like almost an encyclopedia that has stuff about all the different characters, and came with I remember it had this holographic card that had L's real name in it and everything. Oh gosh, it's been a while since I've actually been able to talk about Death Note specifically with someone in depth, and now it's just getting a lot of memories coming back. Yeah. For the live action ones that, like we mentioned, they had a slightly different ending, and in that version, L wins, or rather, that Nier never happens because L orchestrates a situation where both he and Light end up dying. And like I said, spoiler alert, series and movie has been out for a while, that L writes his own name in the Death Note to make it so that when Rem goes to write his name in the Death Note, that there's no effect because it's already been written, and that then he's able to find Rem's Death Note and have the proof there of, okay, everyone's name was written except who Light's. And so taking certain cues in particular from the manga and anime of that last reveal, but making it so that it's able to happen with L. And I'm not sure if that was partially so they didn't have to do a third and fourth film because they would have had to otherwise, or if they did that as a creative decision, but it was an interesting one. And I enjoyed that variation of saying, all right, this is an alternate ending, because it still felt very in the spirit of the series of, okay, I can see a universe where that's how it actually ended.
Yeah, I liked it, especially because we did still get a third movie.
Yes.
We still got the L Change the World.
Yeah, which I suppose feels a bit not so great, especially given the last couple of years.
Yeah. Although it does come, as I said, it does come with one of my favorite quotes of all time.
Yeah, what is that quote?
So L says to a little boy, who a lot of fans just call Nier, and he says to a little boy at the very end before he leaves, no matter how brilliant, you alone cannot change the world. Which I really liked.
Yeah, and now that you mention that, I think at the end of the film that L has a line, something of like, you know, whenever someone is in trouble, you will always be near. And that people sort of are saying, all right, that in this alternate timeline that person is near or becomes near.
Because it gives them to the orphanage that Elle grew up in.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I can see how that would be. I remember making that connection as well, even if it isn't explicitly stated. I do like that touch as well of saying, okay, here's the successor.
Yeah. It's awesome. I love it. It's such a good show.
Ah, yes. And then the quote from the dub, the classic, "I'll take a potato chip and eat it."
It's so tough. I hate it so much. Although Eld gets a really good line, and it's like, I think Misa says, my life would be so dark without light," and Eld just goes, "Yeah, it would be pretty dark."
Yes, yeah, I remember that one. I think that the dub for the series overall is actually very strong.
It's brilliant.
That they have, those quirky one-off lines. I actually think the "yes, it would be very dark" is totally in character for L. The potato chip and eat it, not so much, but whatever. They get a mulligan on that one. That overall, when I actually recommend Death Note to people, I usually suggest watching the dub because since there is so much dialogue, I say, especially if you're not accustomed to reading subtitles a lot, that you don't want to be missing all of the visuals of the series because there's so much to read in that one. So I do like the dub, even if there is that, momentary comedic sort of weird line that overall, I actually think it's really one of the strongest dubs out there.
It was, especially at the time.
Yeah.
Especially at the time. It was definitely one of the strongest dubs that came out around that era.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there was one other thing, now it's slipping my mind.
Hmm?
It'll probably hit me in a little bit. Anyway, apart from L, Light, Near, and Mellow, did you have any favorite characters?
Matsuda.
Okay, yeah.
I love Matsuda. He was a goofball.
Yeah, and just he sort of represented the layman, I suppose, because you had everyone else who was very professional, and he was, I felt, almost a stand-in for just giving different perspectives, really, and making sure that it wasn't all the characters being in lockstep, that he provided narratively a good amount of friction, but also, like you mentioned, being a goofball, that levity of, in a dark series, having just a little pinch of comedic relief every now and again felt good and felt right from a narrative standpoint, and that his role in the narrative, I think, is very important.
I think also, in a way, he kind of fleshed out a really good perspective, as you said, in which he had been with Light since the start of his career, and he trusted him. And at the end, he's the one who feels betrayed. And without him, you wouldn't really get that angle of, like, Light actually betrayed a lot of people. And, like, even his own dad died, and he didn't care.
Yeah.
Like, but Matsuda gave you that moment of realizing, like, the characters in the show are actually, they're human. Like, they do feel betrayed, they do feel hurt, and there's a lot of people who will be in Matsuda's position in which they're very fucking hurt. Just he, unfortunately, is at the forefront of it.
Yeah. Just that sort of righteous anger of, you were my friend, I trusted you. Like you said, that they had been together for so long, and that Matsuda, on multiple occasions, had been the person to vouch for Light. And perhaps that was because he was a bit easier to fool than the others. But at the same time, like you said, that he's human, that at the end of the day, when it's revealed and everything, he's like, I'm not such a fool that I'm going to try and forgive you, that I realize I have been fooled and I'm angry.
Yeah, he adds that little humanity, because I mean, it's a show with death gods and a book that kills people. He, at the end of it, brings in that kind of humanity that the series didn't really get to play into a lot, because it was so heavy on the investigation area, and it was all about the cat and mouse game. He, in that very last episode, adds that humanity back into it, and I think he plays a really important role in that aspect. But a lot of people just overlook him as he's comic relief.
Oh, I remembered the bit that I was trying to remember. There was a change to the ending in the anime from the manga, and it's the last 15 minutes. And I dislike what the anime did. I think what the manga had the ending as was better. And for the life of me, I usually understand when they make changes, especially if it's, for runtime, or
Yeah.
because something doesn't work as well in a given medium, but I've always been a bit puzzled on the end of the anime. That in the anime, you have Light is revealed, he's shot, and he calls out for Ryuk and says, Ryuk, come out here and kill them, and Ryuk does not respond. Mikami then causes a distraction, which allows Light to escape. He runs across the city and then dies on a staircase. But in the manga, Ryuk responds to Light's call, appears, and says, I'll write the name, and writes Light's name, and then shows it to him. And then you have that 40 seconds of him realizing he's going to die, and it's a very dramatic, but also sort of pathetic ending.
Yeah.
And I felt that that was a lot more satisfying than him running away and dying on a random staircase. And given that the amount of time it takes to do both things is about the same, I could never figure out why they made that particular change.
I feel like it would have been way more interesting, personally, if they kind of combined them in a way that it was like Ryuk wrote the name but didn't make Light aware of it. But I feel like for a lot of people, the fact that in the manga, trying to think of it from a different perspective, they probably weren't happy that at the end of it, Ryuk was the one who wrote the name. For a lot of them, they probably wanted that kind of conclusion to L's investigation of like, we did it. So that's probably why they changed it so much.
Okay.
But I think that's just where I'm going with that, because then they find him, he's dead, and it's not like Ryuk gets the final crown. Like,
that's
they
an
can
interesting
feel like
perspective.
They did a really good job with the investigation, and L got his victory.
Yeah, because I think they show Ryuk, you know, like I think he's sitting on a water tower or something and does write the name, but it felt like Light was already basically dead by that point. Just, you know, he had been shot and was bleeding out. So that perspective, though, of for the human characters and that for the viewers of making it feel like at the end it was the investigation team that was the one to truly end it, and that by that point Ryuk writing the name was a formality. That's an interesting take, and I appreciate that, because that makes me feel a bit better about that ending that I have never really liked, and I still prefer the manga, but that makes it much more palatable for me, I suppose, and just that, like I said, I've always sort of tried to figure out, all right, this had to have been a deliberate decision, and even if it's one that I don't necessarily like, I can't figure out why. And obviously we're never gonna actually know unless there's some interview where the writers come out and say, we did this for this reason. That is probably the best justification for it that I've ever heard. So cool.
Yeah. It's the midpoint between the live action and the manga ending. It shows you that middle perspective. But I also think, in a way, the series was so chaotic, and especially in the last few episodes, it was so high energy and high drive. If they had did that in the warehouse, in which he knows his name is there and he's going crazy, I don't think it would have had the same impact as the silence of when Light's just trying to get away and you see the desperation in his face, and you see Ryuk quietly write the name.
Yeah, and then
the death is just silent.
In particular, yeah, because the music that's playing as you see him running, and they do a couple of little flashbacks of earlier scenes, that it is a very somber, quiet end. Whereas you're right, if it was the original ending, that it would be very high octane, very dramatic, and then probably a sudden cut to silence or something. But that just emotionally, it has a bit of a different beat there, and that's another really interesting take.
There's also the kind of aspect of a lot of fans. Sorry, I could talk about this all day.
Oh, please.
There's an aspect a lot of fans have, and I believe in this, in which Light and Kira are separate. And I think the anime, like, for a moment, when he's running and he has the wound, you can see Light. It's not Kira. You can actually see Light, and he's desperate. And he doesn't... He knows it's the end. Like, he knows it's coming. And so I think that also adds into that, is, like, there was still that little bit in him that didn't want to do it. Maybe I think a lot of fans give it that credit. Also, as
Mm.
Destin says in the chat, dying on
Yeah,
the
I was about
staircase
to
is a
say.
great metaphor for like the stairway to heaven, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really good metaphor for that. So I like
Yeah,
that.
that
Because
he
he's
can't
stuck in
go to heaven or
purgatory
hell.
now.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's stuck.
Now, were you aware that there was almost a Death Note musical on Broadway? They've had musicals in Japan, but that it almost came to Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard the cast recording of that? Because they actually did a workshop of it.
Yeah, I heard one of the songs. It's pretty good, actually.
No, I was going to say it's so much better than it has any right to be. It's really good. They recorded a full 8 to 10 songs of this musical, and like I said, it actually was staged in Japan and had a pretty successful tour from what I understand, but that they did a Broadway workshop where they brought people in and just laid down these songs, and they're really good.
They are.
For those of you who are really into Broadway and musicals, it was the writer of the musical Jekyll and Hyde, who was doing the script for English. And while they never recorded any of just the scenes themselves, any of the actual dialogue, that the songs were really good. That there was the song between L and Light, I forget which one it is, but basically it's I think it's supposed to be happening when they're having the tennis match, and it's this really intense driving song. They give Light's father a really somber and ultimately sad ballad it's called Honor Bound and Bound by Honesty, and it's him desperately wanting to believe in Light's innocence. And obviously to us, the viewer, that's incredibly tragic. But it's just, you usually think of, oh no, they're trying to do a musical adaptation of something like this. It's probably going to be super cringy, and it wasn't.
It actually was quite good.
There was a line here and there of, okay, it felt a little bit forced, but that's Broadway for you. That it's gonna be a little bit campy here and there, but it felt ultimately. I would have liked to have seen that show. I would have bought tickets. I would have tried to see it, but sadly, it never came to fruition. So you can find those, I think, on YouTube still, but never actually ended up happening.
One of the songs started doing rounds on TikTok. I forget which one it was though.
Ooh, that's cool. Who knows? Maybe someday somebody will pick up the rights to it and it'll happen. I'm not holding my breath for it, but who knows? The series has obviously had legs for a very long time now. I didn't look up how old it is now because that would make me feel old, but
the musical is, let me double check. So the first production of it was 2014. It was taken to Seoul in 2020. It's going to Seoul this year.
Ooh, okay. Well, that's interesting that it's still being actively put on, or that, it's in the planning. So who knows? Maybe it could end up happening.
Yeah.
Death Note, but in the style of Hamilton. Now, I guess the real question is, are we talking about a show that is a operetta where everything is sung, or are we saying that we're getting Lin-Manuel Miranda to adapt Death Note? Because if we're getting Lin-Manuel Miranda...
he is Disney's John Ratzenberger, honestly.
I don't know the name John Ratzenberger. I feel like I should, though.
He is considered Pixar's golden ticket.
I can see that.
Every Pixar movie, you will know his voice when you hear it.
Yeah, and obviously Lin-Manuel Miranda over the past half decade in particular has definitely gone past just Hamilton, but is now one of the biggest tools in Disney's arsenal, having done a lot of work for Pixar and their different animated films. I know that he had a hand in Kanto, if memory serves.
Love Kanto.
Yeah, I still have not seen that one. I do need to, though.
So good. I watched it with Hazel and stuff. That's in the chat. Hi Hazel, I love you. Yes. I watched it with her and she was sobbing through the whole movie.
Oh no.
Sorry, Hazel. Sorry, girl.
Ah.
It was so good though.
Yeah, but now I'm thinking of, gosh, Lin-Manuel Miranda doing something super dark like that with Death Note. But the thing is, I could see it happening. I think it would be cool, but I think in general, Lin-Manuel Miranda is one of the best lyricists of the past several decades, in that if he were to want to do if there's a project that captures him mentally enough that he could do a good adaptation or just a good creation of anything, if he wanted to and had that drive, I think he has that skill.
Oh, yeah, 1000% he could.
All right, time to start. Lin-Manuel Miranda petition, get him to read Death Note. We need to make this happen, folks. Let's go.
Oh no. No, he'd want to play L or something. He cast himself as L.
Sure, fine. If the cost of us getting a Lin-Manuel adaptation of Death Note is him playing L, that's a price I'm willing to pay.
I'm not willing to pay it.
Now, is that because you don't want to see him die, or because you think that it would be weird seeing him in that role?
Controversial opinion, probably. As wonderful as a songwriter is, I can't stand his voice.
That's fair. That's fair.
Like, he's a great writer, but I can't.
Some people have voices that just don't click for them. That's totally valid.
I seen a TikTok, and it was talking about how Aaron Burr in Hamilton has such a beautiful voice, and like they're singing Dear Theodosia. And he's singing that, and it's so beautiful. And then suddenly the lights turn up, and you just hear flip. Because he comes and he starts singing to his son, and it's like, Lynn, why?
Now, taking a slight turn, another anime, and also about music, but as tonally different as you can get from Death Note, one of the other series that you mentioned that means a lot to you is Love Live.
Yes.
So, as far away from Death Note as we can get, this is obviously a very bright, colorful, happy series. There's drama in it, for sure, that there's a lot of very deep and meaningful interactions between the characters and topics that are covered, but ultimately, Love Live is a positive series. It is a very happy series, and it's one that you've said, in particular, that first series means a lot to you. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. It kind of... I remember when the first single came out, and I watched it, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then Snowhalation happened, and that's when it blew up, and then the anime was announced, and I was like, oh, I have to watch this. And I loved it.
Snowhalation is really good. Just in general, the Muse catalog is very good, but I definitely think that for me, the one that I listened to more than others was Snowhalation. It's a really good song, and it's weird to think about how old that series is now, because they've done, I think, 5 iterations.
It's 12 years old.
12 years old, and that the first series had 2 seasons. Then there was Sunshine, Aqua's, and I can't remember.
So there was two of the original with Muse, and they got a movie. They also had the OVA, which announced the 6th single. The Love Live Sunshine was 2 series as well. You then also have and they got a movie as well. You also have Nijigasaki, who were made originally just for the Love Live All-Stars game, but they ended up getting an anime series, and now they've got a season 2 announced. And then Liella got their own series recently, which was Love Live Superstar.
Superstar, that's the one I couldn't remember
and
the name of.
There's 2 games on mobile, and then they have arcade games.
Yep. Yeah, it has become just one of the biggest franchises in terms of just idol series, and I feel like Love Live was what caused the idol boom in the West. That obviously idols and idol culture have been a thing in Japan for many, many years, decades, and that we had gotten the occasional idol series in the West, or I suppose I should say outside of Japan, and there was Idolmaster, which had seen relative success. But I feel like the release of Love Live was a big turning point for that genre outside of Japan.
For sure. Like, even with Idolmaster, like, it did do well, but with Love Live, you see way more cosplays, fan art, group meetings, to the point that they've actually done shows in, like, Love Live Sunshine, Aqua have actually done shows in LA. So, yeah, they did great for themselves.
Yeah. And I remember for me, one of my biggest memories, I suppose, with Love Live as a series is the fact that the second season of the original series with Muse was airing during my last year of college. And one of the things that I did in college, I was very involved with different musical groups. I was part of an orchestra, and I was in the marching band. And it's the type of thing of me seeing in my last semester the stories of the seniors who were getting ready to graduate, and the whole thing of, it's not going to be the same without you, and the idea of whether or not to keep a group going when people leave, and the different decisions and emotions of that, seeing people leave a group or leaving a group yourself when you have these connections, and it's not you're leaving because something has happened or because you've lost the passion, but just it has different connotations in the VTuber community, but literal graduation and that type of thing hit me on a very personal level. So I remember getting surprisingly emotional during those last couple episodes because I saw myself in a lot of the situations that were happening there.
It probably works so well because the term graduation has been in idol culture for a really long time.
Yeah.
But with the idea of it being school idols, they could use that word and make it more of a, it's a school graduation. They're not leaving the group. So that makes it more kind of like, oh shit, okay, so it's not even their choice of graduation. It's like, you kind of have to.
Yeah, and that happened even before I was aware of what the term graduation meant in idol culture, because I had seen Idolmaster and loved that, but they don't really cover graduation, at least in the original anime adaptations of Idolmaster.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even thinking on that level. And it wasn't until years later, it was like, oh, that was supposed to be an analogy, a metaphor for idol graduation. Oh, that was actually pretty clever there. But for me, I was really thinking, just sort of school graduation, the idea of, all right, they're moving on to other things. So that's, I guess, my sort of personal story with the original Love Live. Were there any characters that you had particular fondness for, that some people have, their Oshi of just this is the character that, they would get the colors of or the merch of? For me, I always liked them equally, that there weren't really any that I disliked except for Nico in the beginning, because I found her annoying at the start. She grew on me by the end. But in the beginning, in the beginning, didn't care for her. But for you, did you have any favorites? And from your reaction, it might have been Nico.
For the first generation, I really liked all of the third years. I felt like all of the third years, I kind of had something I could relate to with them. But of course, my number one is Nozomi, the Taroh queen. I mean, come on.
Okay, yeah.
And she's like the mama of the group. I absolutely love Nozomi. She's my number one. And I'm glad she got some focus, and it's kind of like she's the origin behind Snow Halation in a way, and I love that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, her story plays into Snow Halation, which made me so happy. For Aqua, I think Ruby's my Oshi. Really weird switch in character type, but I really love Ruby. I'm a pretty big Ai Furihata fan, so her voicing Ruby definitely helps. But I absolutely love the Kurosawa sisters.
They are fun, yeah. I've seen, like I mentioned, both seasons of Muse. I've seen the first season of Sunshine. I haven't seen any of the other two. Have you seen all of the different variations, or?
I haven't seen Superstar yet. I haven't actually watched the series yet because, again, I've just been so busy.
Fair, very fair.
It came out towards the end of last year, and I just haven't had a chance. Nijigasaki it's all right. I like that they're individual idols. They're all solo idols. They're not a group. But I think they're just adding too many.
It is a lot.
They keep adding new people, but I like that they have a character who sings primarily in English. And her seiyuu is Australian Japanese, so she actually speaks English, so that's good for their broadcast. And they also now have two seiyuu who sing in Chinese, which is a massive selling point because Love Live is huge in China. It's really popular in China.
I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah, so the voice actress for Cuckoo in Liella is from Shanghai. She actually started as a Love Live cosplayer.
Oh, okay. That's always fun when you get to, have that type of story where someone who is super into a series ultimately becomes part of it.
Yeah. It's the same for Kanako from Aqua. She plays Hanamura. Not Hanamura. Hanamaru. I'm getting mixed up with Overwatch. Oh my god. Hanamaru, she voices. She actually used to be an Utaite back in the day, and I used to follow her stuff. So when she got cast in Love Live, it was like a huge deal back then. It was amazing.
That's really neat. That's cool. That's always really fun. On the English side, it's very different from Love Live, but I feel like a recent example of that would be Kira Buckland being able to play Jolene in JoJo. I'm not actually a JoJo fan, but it's something that I've been aware of because it's such a big story that she had for years and years and years said that her dream role was Jolene even before she became a professional voice actress, and that, all these years later for her to be able to get that role that was obviously such a source of inspiration for her. It's a very feel-good story.
It's amazing because I remember her, like, I used to do voice acting back in the day years ago, and we were all part of kind of the same community, and it's so cool seeing who's like achieved what they wanted to do, who actually went for it kind of thing, and who went professional. It's so cool to see.
Yeah, it's really exciting because obviously it's a very competitive industry. It's a very tough industry, and there's so many talented people that for any number of reasons just don't get their big break. But when you see someone who's able to actually just through hard work and a little bit of circumstance in their favor is able to have that breakthrough is so exciting. And you sometimes get to see that in different areas as well, and it's always fun to see those. And like I said, there's a lot of people who put in a lot of work who don't sadly get that opportunity, but that's why you have to really savor the ones that are able to have that success, because it's a big deal, and it takes a lot to get there.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of people had to uproot to Texas that I know back in the day. A lot of them uprooted to Texas and then didn't actually didn't get into it really.
It's funny because I'm actually in Texas for completely separate reasons.
Yeah, I think it's Fort Worth.
The Dallas-Fort Worth area, because that's where Funimation's headquarters is. Sentai Filmworks has their HQ in Houston, so about 4 or 5 hour drive away. But if you're willing to make that drive, that can be something. But in particular, that outside of LA, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is going to be where you get a lot. And, sometimes people find their way into commercial VO, and frankly, that's where you're going to make more money and have more regular work than anime. But, there's folks who've done work for Funimation all throughout DFW, even some folks who don't specialize in voice acting. That I have a friend who's in a local theater troupe, and he's like, half the people in my theater troupe have done bits for One Piece, because just if you're an actor, that you'll take what work you can get, and sometimes they'll just have those casting calls, and because they have those acting chops from stage roles, that they're brought in for things like that. And so it's definitely something that in the arts community of Dallas, Fort Worth as a whole, you see that influence and footprint.
Definitely.
You mentioned that you used to do some voice work, and I actually was not aware of that. Are there any particular roles that, whether they would be dream roles or ones that you've done in just fan productions that have been particularly meaningful to you?
Not really. It's been a really long time, if I'm being honest. Long enough that there's only one game that's currently out with my voice in it.
Okay, and I don't want you to dox yourself, so don't say that.
They didn't put my name!
Oh!
It was so long ago that it was back in the day. It was like, we don't really, it's not really a credit thing. But I voiced, every character in it. So
oh my goodness.
it's really cringe.
Wait a minute.
It's really cringe.
Oh.
But yeah, there's only one that's out right now. But I'd like to get back into it. I'd like to be able to voice in a proper release game.
Mm-hmm. I hope you're able to explore that a bit on the side when you're not completely being buried by work.
We'll see. We'll see.
Are there any dream roles that you have or series that you would want to be in, even if you don't know what role it would be?
I really don't know. I mean, I don't play a lot of games with voices, oddly enough. Oddly enough. I really don't play a lot of games with voiceover. The main one is probably like Overwatch.
Okay, yeah, and because you did have that mix-up role, I was like, okay, so she's into Overwatch.
I like Overwatch.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Any favorite characters to play, or just characters that you like the design and story of?
I'm a Mercy main.
You
I'm
know,
a Mercy Brig main.
that feels entirely appropriate. Surprise, surprise, the person who's a psychiatric nurse and, brands herself as a healing Dream Eater VTuber, likes the healer. I feel like I should have known this, honestly.
My main ones are Mercy, Moira, and Brig. I really like them three. If I do end up playing a DPS, usually I go Sombra.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Sombra.
I remember the reveal video for Sombra. That was a cool one.
Yeah.
I still want that. I don't even play Overwatch. I want an Overwatch movie. Just the shorts that they've done are they're Pixar level quality. I just give me an hour and a half, 2-hour film of that. I'm sure that the creative team would be capable of doing it. Obviously, Blizzard is dealing with a lot of stuff right now.
That's why a lot of us stopped playing. When that all happened, but it's been bought over by Microsoft now, so a few of us are kind of getting back into it and giving it another chance.
Yeah, here's hoping that they're able to do a bit of rehabilitation.
Yeah, the main thing is they have to get rid of that head guy. They have to get rid of him because he knew. Bobby. They need to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
If they get rid of him, everyone will come back.
They've said that he will remain CEO, quote, or well, I shouldn't say quote because I can't remember the exact wording, but it was something to the effect of until the acquisition is done. That while the acquisition has, been announced, that they're going through different proceedings just to make sure that it's okay by the trade commissions and all the different paperwork and stuff, and that there's going to be transitional time, but they have been a bit coy of whether or not he will remain after that transition phase is done. And I think you are very much not alone in, fingers crossed that, okay, fine, you want to keep the person in charge to oversee the transfer. Fine.
But get rid of him.
But once that's done, ...
The thing is, what they really have to do, and the community is dying, because how long has it been since Overwatch 2 was announced? I think I seen a tweet.
Year and a half, 2 years.
There's actually a Twitter account called Days Since Overwatch 2 was announced, and today's post is 341 days.
Okay, so it's just under a year in that case.
Just under a year.
Thought it had been more. I could have sworn it had been more than a year.
That's just under 3 years.
Wait, did you say
341 days? No, 841.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. That,
so
yeah.
I was like 300 odd days in a year, so that's nearly 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I heard 341. That's why I was really confused. I was like, wait, I could have sworn it's been more than a year, but 841. Yes, that makes a lot more sense. So yeah, it's been a while.
What they have to do once the deal is over, they have to get rid of that guy, and they have to get back to doing these, like Aaron Keller. You need to start doing these monthly updates that you said you were going to do, because you did them for the first 2 months, and then we've heard nothing since.
Yeah, well, to be fair, so this is something that's come up on previous shows, and I've mentioned it very openly. By day, I work for a game developer, and initially, I was hired on as a community manager. Nowadays, I do QA and production work because I realized I did not like community work.
Yeah.
As someone who's done community, I look at that situation and say, he probably wants to do his monthly updates, but is not able to do so because of, just everything, the powers that be saying you can't talk about A, B, C, and D. And since he can't talk about A, B, C, and D, that would mean that if he were to do an update, it would all be fluff, and that he's probably saying, I'd rather just lay low and wait until I'm not going to report until there is something to report, because if he were to do a monthly update and it's just fluff every time, he would probably get even more flack, because then there's the monthly reminder of, okay, there's no update, but it's just sort of the mentality of out of sight, out of mind. And even though some people won't forget that, I think he and Blizzard are taking the calculated decision of, we can't talk about the things that people want to hear about.
Yeah.
So we're just not going to talk about anything. And I'm guessing that he desperately wants to talk about things, so and that the decisions are not his.
Personally, the way I see it, they didn't need an Overwatch 2. The maps are the same, just with day changes. They could have added that into the original. They're doing updated skins. They could have done that into the original. There's nothing like incredible that's new about this new game. The PvE could have added it into this one. The new push style maps could have added it into this one. There's just nothing. It's not a different game. It's the same game.
My guess is that there's a lot under the hood that's different, because sometimes when you design a game of that size, and even if you expect it to be big, you don't necessarily expect it to be as big as it gets, and that modifying or making certain additions or changes because of how base level code is written might end up being very difficult. So my guess is that a big part of 2 is under the hood stuff that makes things like updates or changes or just tweaks significantly easier, and that the base level code is being developed with the intent of longevity that might be, magnitudes more difficult in one's code, just in terms of either upkeep or updates, and saying, all right, to make a certain change that we would want to make every couple of months takes 3 weeks of dev time right now in Overwatch 1's code. But we're building Overwatch 2 to make it so we can do the same changes in a week's time or less, meaning we then save those 2 weeks' time every time we need to make that change, and we can put that towards other things. So obviously speculation on my end, but that's whenever I see a game like that that doesn't have a lot of visible changes, I usually take that as a cue of there's under the hood optimization here with the play of longevity.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see when it comes out, but at the moment it keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed.
Yeah.
They're not announcing a date now.
Yeah, circumstance around that game, from the delays to the overall Blizzard shenanigans, have certainly not played in its favor.
Yep. Been a shit year for Blizzard.
Yep. But we can hope, because I know, Blizzard used to be really a shining beacon for the industry, that a lot of people held up Blizzard as one of the best places to work, and that even just the fact that they ran World of Warcraft for so long, and that it was, even if it had certain expansions that were considered better than others, that they were able to keep it going for so long and keep it at such high quality, and then that their other releases were really good. And the change over time is a bit unfortunate, but hopefully things will start to be on the upswing again.
We'll see.
If you could add a character to Overwatch, any class, any aesthetic, is there a type of character that you've always thought, oh, I'd love to see this type of thing in the game?
They're kind of adding it by the theories that are going around, is a healer that uses drones.
Okay.
So apparently the rumor is going that they are adding that. But originally it was supposed to be, what's his name? Envy, what was the guy's name? He's in the DOVA, like the mech squad. And he's part of that Overlord, I think his name might be. And he's so cute. He's adorable. I want to pinch his cheeks. But he was supposed to use drones and be like a support character. But apparently that was an idea that someone had on YouTube. And I was like, I love that idea. But apparently they're taking that concept and using it for another member of the mech squad. So I don't know. But yes, I'd also like to add Jeff Kaplan to the game. just so that I can play Jeff Kaplan. And every game starts with, "Hey guys, it's Jeff from the Overwatch team."
Oh gosh, I hope they put in just. He's done enough that he deserves an Easter egg somewhere.
He has a cafe in Overwatch too.
Okay, there you go.
And in the New York map, there's a place called Jeff's.
Well, that's the entire reasoning of Overwatch 2, because they had to get that cafe in.
That's what it is. That's why they're releasing a whole new game. Like, this is an exclusive.
Mm-hmm. That there was something in the code that wouldn't let us build this cafe, and it has to be in there, folks. It is necessary functionality. We're sorry. So.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'd add anything else. I just always want more supports. Just, I feel like every release is always DPS. It's like, we need something for tanks and supports.
Yeah, that's gonna get into much nitty grittier stuff than I know. That I casually, occasionally will watch Overwatch League things. I don't keep up with it super actively, but it has obviously gotten a lot of support in it, and just the fact that the Overwatch League is one of the biggest esports leagues. I would say the biggest that isn't a MOBA. And it's been really cool to see, and I hope that they are able to continue supporting it and see that through when the sequel comes out. If memory serves, they're changing it so it's going to be 5-person teams instead of 6.
5 to 5. There's going to be 1 tank less, which I don't think is a good idea, but oh well.
Now that's going to be really interesting from a team comp standpoint, because that means that every team in the league just had their roster cut.
Yeah, people are out of a job. And at the same time, it's just basically changing it into a shoot game. Like, before it was, you had to figure out what composition would work really well for, like, your tanks and your supports, who would work well for really good metas.
Because that 6th slot could be a bit flexible, but without it, things end up being a bit more rigid.
This is just going to be shoot game, which I'm not happy about, especially because healers are kind of having a bit of a nerf. So, but yeah, we need something for the tanks and supports. Come on, Overwatch, because even all the recent skin challenges have been. They announced one today, and it's another fucking DPS.
People like big numbers. It's a psychology thing. People like big numbers and being able to hit things hard.
Stop it! Gold healing is still a gold badge.
Envy says that you're actually very good at Mercy as well. That do you find yourself playing healers in most types of games? That I'm not sure if you play, any tabletop games or other just team-based games like Overwatch. That do you usually find yourself in that healing role, or is that something particular for the characters in Overwatch?
I always play a support role. Even in Valorant, I started as Sage, went to Skye, and now I play Killjoy. And she's all about using alarm bots and shit. So to support, to know when people are coming. So she's a support technically. Even I just downloaded Lost Ark, and immediately I ended up being a support role. I can't help it. I naturally just go towards it because I'm so used to everyone else wanting to be the shoot big numbers person that I'm like, okay, I'll take care of you.
Well, actually, that's funny because I'm very similar. That when it comes to games, whether it's D&D or whatever team composition things, that I'm very indifferent. That I'm usually just happy to play. That I enjoy, for D&D in particular, I enjoy the role play bit, and I usually don't have a given character preference. And it's just, all right, everyone else on the team, you all do what you want, and I'll fill in whatever is needed. And I'm happy to be that flexible person who just sees this is what we're lacking. And like you said, it's usually people who want to do the shoot. And that means that I've just circumstantially fallen into the support and healer roles more often than not.
Unfortunately, so that tends to always be the case. But even in real life, I was always called the mom of the group. So. It definitely seems like that is a recurring theme and just part of your personality. Just everything from your profession to how you end up playing games is that you like being supportive. Just
taking the term wholesale, just that you like being supportive, you like being there for people, you like being able to help, and that you have a very giving personality. And I suppose it's funny seeing it sort of seep into those other aspects, but at the same time, it's really sweet to see that, it takes a special kind of person who can take on that type of role, because it's not an easy one.
No, it is not. Yeah, I worry for the second game, because I already get enough of like, oh my god, not enough healing, and I'm like, well, she heals less in Overwatch 2, so get ready.
Yeah, hopefully they, like you said, either buff healing or give them something else.
Yeah, even something to like defend ourselves.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the things that they've been sort of holding back with the designs, that because it certainly sounds like that's a glaring issue, and you want, whenever you have a competitive game like this, you want to have everything be viable, because if something isn't viable, that reduces the number of competitive choices, and at that point it's wasted time and effort from the development team, because why bother taking the time to make something if it's not even going to be usable? So they're going to want to make it viable somehow. It's just when and how.
Exactly. We'll see.
We'll see, indeed. Hopping around a little bit. So we mentioned music earlier with Love Live, and one of the things that you mentioned to me is that there is a Belgian artist that you're very fond of, and I forget how to pronounce it. Stromae? Please correct me.
Stromae. He is an artist from Belgium who sings all of his songs in French.
Is there something about their style or music that really appealed to you? And I suppose if you had to place them in a genre or two, where would you say that their music falls?
I don't know. Let's ask Google. I really don't know. I think they're more like alternative, like synth music, electro kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really think I was into like synth music, and then I realized that like I like synthwave stuff and like all that. And Stromae kind of uses that and utilizes it in his music, and it's really interesting to me. And just I was introduced to him via a song called Papa Ute, which is probably one of his most famous. And Papa Ute, basically, it's written in a kind of funny way, but if you were to translate Papa Ute in French, it's like, Dad, where are you? And then I found out about his actual history. His father was killed in the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Oh, wow.
When he was really young. And so I was like, wow, like that's amazing. So you listen to the song now and it's like, it's got that extra meaning to it. And then I checked out a lot of his other songs, and it kind of looks at society. Like there's songs that address like how you kind of like for Tafet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he has a song called Tafet, which looks at basically a bunch of people are watching over a person running through a maze, and their challenges in this maze are like their boss, their girlfriend, their mom, and it's about the pressures that society puts on them and how basically the higher ups look down on them and see they're struggling as a game. And it's really interesting. Yeah, songs addressing like male and female perspective. That's just the meme. It's really interesting.
So doing a Google search, as you suggested, the genres that pop up are hip hop and electronic primarily, but Wikipedia also lists electropop, new beat, Eurodance, and house. I am not familiar with house as a musical genre, but
I think that's more common in Europe, house.
Yeah. It's described as electronic dance music characterized by a repetitive 4 on the floor beat and a typical tempo of 120 to 130 BPM. Yeah. Neat.
Yeah, he got a really big with Alors on Dance. That became like a big song pretty much all over Europe. And it was in like #1 in the charts and stuff.
Ooh, I do not listen to much popular music, regardless of genre, so this type of stuff usually escapes me. That I usually end up listening to soundtracks is what I usually end up with, whether it be movie, game, anime soundtracks. That's the type of stuff that appeals to me. So I I even miss stuff that's like US top of charts. So sadly, the ones that are European charts completely miss my radar. But
Yeah.
it's always cool to learn about those different types of artists. And obviously, there are so many super talented people. So you mentioned the song about their father that was the one that you first heard. Was there something about their style that particularly appealed to you, or maybe it was the message? And you mentioned the music video as well with the maze and everything.
That's a different song.
Oh, whoops.
Sorry, I spoke very quickly. The maze was for Tafet. Papa Ute, the video has like a young boy and like.
Oh wait, that's right. Yes, because that's the one about his father, and then the one in the maze is about.
Yes,
yeah.
society looking down on. Yeah.
So was there something about Papa Ute that really captured you?
I liked the kind of the story about it, to be honest. And like, if you watch the music video, it is about a boy who lives in a neighborhood where like all the kids have their parents, but his dad is just a doll. It's like a really big life-size, like just a doll, and it can't play with him. And it's like kind of like the absence of that character being there in your life. And at the end, he becomes a doll himself. He basically mimics his father to the point he becomes a doll. And so he becomes absent, basically, is what the indication is. But I don't know. I think it was the meaning behind it that really, really kind of made it stand out for me.
Sadly, does not sound like a very feel-good song, but
it's pretty, actually. It's quite a boppy song, to be honest. But if you know the meaning behind it, it gets really depressing.
Yeah. It's always very interesting when an artist is able to do that, of just juxtaposing, you know, a very happy, peppy, upbeat song. But then if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, wait a minute, this isn't happy at all. It's a facade.
He has a song called Conseil, which I forget what Conseil translates to in French, but it sounds like the word for cancer in French. And the song, I think he wrote for his, like, about his feelings for when his mum got diagnosed with cancer. I think it translates to like who's next.
Oh goodness.
I think Conseil translates to like who's next, if I remember correctly. He does say that in the song, but I could be wrong. I don't speak French. But yeah, so he has all these different songs and they all have pretty serious meanings.
And that might be another reason why it's taken me that I usually, like I said, I'm a musician myself, and I have so much respect for people who are able to convey these meaningful, deep things in their songs. For me, on a personal level, music is usually an escape, something I experience to usually try to feel happy. So that's not my cup of tea, but so much respect for people who are able to convey these types of messages and put that depth in, because it, you know, these are things that people feel and people should talk about, and that for some people, listening to that music is cathartic, and just being able to relate to someone else on that level is so meaningful. So certainly music that I'm glad is out there, even if it is not the type of thing I would listen to on my own time under normal circumstances.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend, especially he uploaded, as I told you, he uploaded his concert that he did in, I want to say Montreal or Quebec, one of those two. He uploaded the concert he did to his YouTube channel, and he's just such a good showman.
Well, that's really cool. Oops.
It's so fun to watch.
Oh, sorry. Had a momentary glitch there. We're back. Okay. Yeah, and I'm guessing that was a more recent one, and especially obviously given the past few years that it's been nice to see virtual concerts up, or just previous concerts uploaded like that.
That was 6 years ago by the looks of it. 2015 it was uploaded.
Oh wow. Okay, so that's actually pretty far back.
Yeah. But it's incredible to watch.
Are there any pieces of his that are, you know, particular favorites of yours? Would it be maybe one of those first ones that you heard, or are there others that you find yourself listening to a bit more than others?
Tafet is definitely one of my favorites. It's a banger. Tuslemema is another one that's really good. That kind of tells like the ideas of a relationship from a male and a female perspective. He covers both. And then Formidable is another really good one. It's taken from the perspective of a man getting drunk after he has issues with his ex-partner, and he recorded that in I think it was in Brussels. He recorded that where he basically clips started coming out of Stromae being drunk and belligerent on the street, and it wasn't until later on when the music video came out, it was revealed he was filming it for a music video. He just had a bunch of secret hidden cameras. He had a bunch of secret hidden cameras set up around, and it was a way to see how people would react to a guy in his situation.
Oh wow.
And only one person helped him.
Oh.
Everyone else, there was a bunch of people who decided to film him. And in the end, you see the police getting involved.
That's interesting on an entirely different level, because then you're going into, social commentary, but also the fact that you're having a music video filmed in secret like that, which is just my brain always thinks from a production level of just, all right, what does it take to set this up? What are the different pieces that need to be put into place? And it makes you think, all right, I would guess that law enforcement was made aware of this ahead of time, because usually,
I'm not so sure.
Because part of me thinks, all right, you would probably need a permit of some sort to do this, but then again, maybe not, and just like you might want to tell these people, all right, we are planning to do this because we are, filming this video, and you do not need to be rougher than necessary, or know that this person is not going to be a threat to anyone. But at the same time, I suppose if you want to get the genuine reactions, that maybe he just sort of took the risk and said, all right, I know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to behave in such a way that maybe even looking to eventually be found and apprehended by law enforcement, that might be part of the point of saying, all right, if no one else is going to help me, that this is what things can lead to. So that's just a fascinating, approach in general.
He is really interesting. I would 100% recommend him.
Apart from the Stromae, are there any other artists, whether it be in that genre or others, that have particularly stuck out to you, or ones that you might be listening to a bit more recently?
Not really. As I said earlier, I really like Aifuri Hata. She does her style is very if you know her from Love Live, she plays the high-pitched character, very energetic. All of her songs are very lively, but then she actually goes for a more retro vibe with her music, more 80s styles.
Ooh, okay.
And her stuff is really good. I love stuff like that, or a modern take on older styles. I love that. But I don't really have any other particular artists I can name, to be honest.
That's fine. When we were talking earlier in the week, one thing that came up, which is something, once again, I don't get to talk with a lot of my guests about, is game shows, and that you're a big fan of game shows. You're looking to potentially get game shows incorporated into your own content. And obviously, those take a fair bit of planning and coordination, because you need to get the contestants, but you also need to make all of the questions, and usually there's going to be overlays involved. So it's a very hands-on process there. But I know for me, game shows are something that I grew up with. I always like watching them, whether it be, sometimes there's word games or something as simple and classic as Jeopardy or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Were there any particular game shows that you grew up with that you point back at as, this was either the first that I watched or the one that really got me into game shows as a whole?
In the UK, so we had Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which I really liked, but I'm really bad at. And I loved that. We had it on the PlayStation 1, was the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game. We had that. There was also the current one is The Chase. I really like The Chase that's on TV at the moment. I think
I'm not familiar with The Chase.
Version of it. There is an American version of it. It's crap, but the UK one is pretty funny, because occasionally the host of it just cracks up laughing at any sort of innuendo. So they'll make questions with innuendos in them just because they know
to
he
mess
will
with the host.
Yeah. But that's really good. I like that game. I like that. I like
What's the
there's
format of
another
that one though? Is it
So
just a
it's basically just a question answer thing. So it's you've got 4 contestants and you go up and you have to like quick fire questions. And every question you get right puts £1,000 into your pool. So then you go to meet the chaser, who is one of the best quiz champions in the world, and not in the world, in the country. So it could be one of any 5, I think there are right now, 5 or 6. And you don't know who it's going to be. They all have their own specialties and stuff. So when they come out, they will offer, you can take, so you've got a grid in front of you, and it's so many spaces between you and the chaser. So you can, in the very center, there's the amount that you won. So if you take that, you have an equal distance between the end and the chaser. They'll offer you a lower value, and that'll put you one step closer to you and one step away from the chaser. So you're closer to finishing. Or you could take a higher offer that they will give you, which will put you closer to the chaser, so they have a quicker chance of catching you. It's very difficult to explain.
No, I think I'm getting it, and then there's another round of questions, and that each time the chaser answers a question correctly, that they get closer to you, and your goal is to reach the goal line before you're caught by the chaser, hence the name. That makes sense.
Exactly. So that's the new one that's out. There's another one called Tipping Point, which is really interesting. Again, question and answer. But I don't know if you have them. Do you remember in the arcade, it was like you would put a coin in and it would drop into more coins. And when the board went back, it would push so many down.
Yeah. You see those a lot in casinos and things like that.
Yes, it's that, but as a game show. So for every question you get right, you get a new token that you can use in the machine. So then you can choose where to put it and all that stuff. Some of the cards have like ×2, so if you drop like 5 down, you get an extra, I think they're worth like £100 each every slot. So if you drop like 5, you would get 500, but if the ×2 is in amongst that, you would get 1,000. And there's like mystery prizes and stuff.
So is the machine a normal size machine of these, or did they make a giant one? I feel like anytime that you have a game show, they have to make everything very big.
They make a giant one, and you have a button on like where you answer the question. So the button that you press to answer the question is also your launch button. So they get it ready for you, and just when you're ready, you press the button and it drops.
Okay.
But I'm also an arcade addict, so that's why I like that game.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. That sounds really interesting. Of just once again, my sort of production show business type of brain of, I want to see what they did with this machine, how they built it and present it all, because that's just sort of how my brain works. I like seeing those types of builds and everything. That's super fun to me.
Yeah. It's really interesting. It's a really good show. I like it.
For me, I grew up watching, I guess which ones would have been my favorite? Because there was just a couple of years in my early teens where I just loved game shows in general. And that back then, I don't know if it's still on right now, but there was just a channel called the Game Show Network where it was basically that type of stuff all day. And that I got into a lot of different ones. Obviously, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was very formative for a lot of people. I think if I had to point to one, I would say The Price is Right. I'm not sure if that's one that is super big overseas, but I think what I liked about that one is the variety of games that it obviously always boiled down to the concept of naming the price of some prize. But I like the variety of, you had that first round where it's just get closest to the price without going over, but then you had some other thing. And then there was the Showcase Showdown and everything where it was back to the basics, but with these giant, crazy prize packages. And obviously Bob Barker, who was the host in the US for many, many years, was very iconic. Nowadays, it's Drew Carey. So I would say that one would probably be my personal favorite. A lot of people, at least in the US, associated with growing up and having a day off from school because it would air usually at like 11 in the morning. And so it's the type of thing that if you were homesick from school, that's usually what you would watch, because you'd be awake by that point and just in your living room or something, assuming you weren't so sick that you had to stay in bed all day. So it's sort of a memory thing there of, if there was the odd day off of school in the middle of the week, that TV schedules didn't change for school schedules, so that's what would be on and what people would see. So that's how that memory is sort of associated for at least a good chunk of folks who grew up in the U.S.
Right, they were more of a Saturday night thing here.
Well, that's when the big ones were on. That's when you would see stuff like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, or the bigger ones. Price is Right was really an anomaly now that I think about it, in the sense that it had a daily show and was on earlier in the day. That was not even when you were talking, Game Show Network or something like that this would be on. I can't remember for the life of me what channel it was, but it wasn't a game show channel. That was just one of the regular networks.
Yeah, I think in the UK that was Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune was our version where it was on during the day, if I remember correctly. I think that was the only one that was on like early in the day. The rest of them, it's usually about 5 o'clock they start.
Yeah, that for us, or at least where I grew up, Wheel of Fortune would usually be on right before Jeopardy. That you would have those two shows back to back between like 5 and 7 p.m. depending on where you lived. That those were the regular evening ones.
Right, that's interesting actually.
Yeah. I guess those in particular, now that you mention it, that Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, I would say, and Price is Right are sort of the big three that I think of for classic game shows, ones that are still running today. All of them have new hosts by now, but obviously game shows have spun into just a whole genre, really, of entertainment. And I feel like those three in particular were sort of how Love Live was, like I said, a catalyst, I think, for idol culture and shows outside of Japan. I see those three game shows as sort of the catalyst for the broader game show genre and sort of industry as we have it today.
Yeah, in the UK, I would say it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Catchphrase. Bullseye and Blockbusters were two of the big ones, like back in the day. Don't ask me how to play it. One was darts themed.
I remember the name Catchphrase, and I feel like I've seen a couple episodes of it, but I can't recall.
There's an American version of it.
It was a word game, I think.
Yeah.
How did you play that one? Dang, now it's gonna bug me.
You would have like an image, and if you got an answer right, you got to like unlock one of the areas of it. So it was like a grid, and you got to unlock an area of it. And I forget exactly, but then it would play like scenes that were kind of like a pun or like a common saying, and you had to guess what the saying was. It was quite an unusual one. I don't know how else to explain it, but they would do like a little animated scene, and it was like describing.
Yeah, I'm actually looking it up now, that there was an American version, and it apparently aired all the way back in '85. It only had 65 episodes in the US, so it wasn't super long lasting. But it was over here, just one that escaped me.
Yeah. It was, I don't know. It's quite an odd concept to describe. I feel like a lot of game shows are like that. They're very
definitely. That it's something that when you see it being played out on TV, that's very simple. That they're designed to be super easy to watch. It you can tune in any episode, having never seen it. But you're very right that trying to describe a game show out of context is very difficult, because it sounds either convoluted or much more complex than it is in practice.
Yeah, like there's a game show idea I had, and I'm like, trying to explain it to people is so difficult. Like, it's so hard to like describe something to someone.
If you do a game show on your channel, do you have any working concepts of what you would do? Would it be something that is designed after an existing game show, or perhaps this unique original concept that you're talking about?
I don't know what I would do with it ultimately, but I know that I want to do something where, like, say you have 3 or 4 contestants, and it's kind of like how in Mastermind they have like their area of specialty. But the issue is they'll never get a question from their area of specialty. Everyone else will.
Oh. So
then it's like you'll see everyone struggling to answer, and the person who is their area of specialty will be sitting like,
just like in pain.
So it's also a way to torture people.
Now that could, I guess for that since you'd be writing the questions, would it be something that you would maybe source the questions from the guests and say, hey, can you write a couple of questions that are easy for someone with your area of specialty? Or would you be going in and writing them all yourself?
I'd probably see if anyone wants to help me, like see if I could get someone, like a research person with me, and the two of us could compile questions together. It really depends. I might test it at some point and see if it works as a format, but I need to figure out like what they're actually trying to do for rounds, if it's just a higher level of difficulty for questions, it's like a higher like Jeopardy kind of format. I really don't know what to do with it, so I'm still in the planning stages of it, but I know I want to do that kind of idea.
Yeah. I wonder what type of meetings occur when new game shows are being pitched and thought of. Like, do they get a bunch of people in a room together workshopping an idea, or is it one person who writes up this concept and then pitches it and maybe tweaks are made along the way? That I'd love to see a show or a documentary about how game shows, especially more modern ones, get made, because for the more for the longer running ones, the older ones of Jeopardy, it seems like a simple enough concept of, okay, we have 3 contestants and they have a board of questions and they answer in the form of a question. Or all right, we have one person, they have 4 options and they have these 3 lifelines that they can use. It simple enough, but nowadays, since things have to be a bit more unique and complex to stand out, that it makes you wonder, how do the shows that make it to air get there?
Yeah, I don't know what the process is. It is interesting to think about it. I'd want to find that out one day. I think that's really interesting.
Again, this is just sort of where my business-minded self winds up going with things of just, all right, so how the heck do these things get to us?
Yeah. No, it's always interesting. If you don't know how something's done, it is always interesting to try and figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, but that'd be really cool.
Are there any game shows that you would particularly want to be a contestant on?
There was a VTuber Jeopardy for a while. I would have loved to have been on that. I would have loved that. But not really that I can think of. The Chase is the only one I'm really into right now, so maybe that one.
If you were on Mastermind, what do you think your area of expertise would be?
Oh God. I don't know. I really don't actually know, to be honest. I feel like I know enough about a lot of different areas, but I'm not an expert in any.
I guess the sort of low-hanging fruit would be probably the medical field, but that feels probably a bit too narrow even for a game show, but maybe not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably psychiatry. I don't know. I don't know. I've never thought about it that way.
Now, going from game shows to video games, obviously, this is actually usually something that I start the show with, that I'll usually talk about, what games have you been playing recently? And, I tuned into your stream and saw you playing this, and talk about that. And like I mentioned, I don't have that this week, that since you've been busy with everything. Yeah. But you mentioned to me that The Sims is a series that you really, really enjoy.
Yeah, it's the first game series I kind of really got into back in the day.
Do you recall which one was your first?
Oh, Sims 1.
Just classic original Sims. There you go.
Classic original Sims. I remember when you couldn't turn properly. It was just 4 angles, and everyone looked the same, just with different hair colors.
I don't know if I've actually played the original Sims. The Sims has just never been a series that I really got into. I've been aware of it for as long as I can remember, certainly, because it's one of the biggest ones out there. I think I played The Sims 2 for a time, but I don't think I ever played the first.
Yeah, the first one I remember, it was very, very strange.
Everything has to start somewhere.
Yeah, but I have a massive soft spot for The Sims 2. The Sims 2 was the first one I got properly obsessed with. So I have a big soft spot for the second one.
When you play, do you find that you have a usual style of I guess, how do you play The Sims? Because it's being a simulator, something that can be approached from any number of angles, and that I forget, is there even a way to properly, quote unquote, win The Sims? That
No.
I don't know if there's ever been a victory condition or something that gives you a "you won" screen. I don't think so.
No. It's just a life simulator. So you have
Yeah.
people who will just play, like, there's the generations. They'll just play, like, from their first sim and just play with the ongoing generations for, like, within the game, years or decades even. And you get really attached to some of the Sims. Like, you see them through their whole life, and it's like, oh, I'm so proud of you. And, like, you get really sad when they do die. But the community has come up with a lot of really good challenges. If you did one of I've won situation, like a rags to riches challenge, which is you literally start with 0 simoleons and you have to try and build yourself up from nothing. Or like there are like different generations challenge in which CC creators have created like items or attire from like the 1920s or something. So if you wanted to do one generation is 1920s, one generation is 1930s, you could do that. There's a lot of different challenges out there and a lot of different play styles to it.
What do you think your main style is? That even if you've done a lot of different playthroughs, I suppose, how did you start playing The Sims? And what was how did you initially play it?
I think it was again, it was a curiosity thing, because when I was that age, it was when you're young, you're like, oh yeah, I can do this stuff. And it's like you have your own house and you build and decorate your own house and like all this kind of stuff. And you see them having kids and families. And as a kid, you're like, because you're taught that's the society norm, you're kind of fascinated by it. But then as I've gotten older, I'm more of just a creator on it. I like decorating and like making Sims. I like challenging myself to make Sims that are as close to like people I know or characters as possible. Or like I like making backgrounds using The Sims 4, and I really love designing in it.
Yeah, especially since getting into VTubers, that I've seen a fair number of people playing The Sims, and what you just mentioned of recreating people is something that you see pretty often, especially when it's people sort of recreating VTubers of, all right, most VTubers, while they are humanoid, will have non-human elements. And you can't do that in The Sims. So how do you then represent these different elements in The Sims? How would you do that? So it's always fun seeing people who are really skilled with those character creators, because it takes a level of artistry, quite frankly, to be able to figure out how you take these things that aren't so obvious of, all right, I know The Sims, I could make a character with green hair for you. I could probably add an eye patch, but how would one represent the ears or the tusks with a just entirely human character?
Exactly. It's a lot of fun. There's actually, when I first started VTubing, one of the reasons that I actually got any form of attention at the start was I actually offered commissions for backgrounds that I designed in it. And that became a big thing. Yeah, I actually did commissions. There's quite a few people who still use them, actually. So that was a lot of fun.
I never knew that.
Yeah, that's my origin story. I started out as a background maker for people using Sims 3. Or Sims 4, sorry, I do apologize.
So were the backgrounds, I guess, the interior of houses, and that you would design the background of those houses and then take a screenshot of...
And then I would edit it, yeah. So I would use a lot of custom content. So I didn't charge a lot, because I'm like, I'm not going to charge if someone else has made the content. So the most I paid is for the license for the website, and also just a little bit for my time. So they were really inexpensive. I think they were like 30 quid. And I would design any kind of background that someone wanted. It could be a room, an office. I had someone ask for a commission of, I've had a few cafes actually. Now that I think about it, there's been a couple of them.
I've never even heard of people using The Sims for their backgrounds, but now that you're describing it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so I noticed that, and no one was doing it, and I'm like, why is no one doing this as a thing? Like, this is a great idea.
Yeah, especially just that the need for overlays and backgrounds is such a fundamental thing in VTubing that some folks who are IRL streamers will use them, but usually it'll just be, a house or something in the background. But in vtubing, that is something that a lot of people need, and obviously there is a whole now sort of cottage industry of artists who do overlays and emotes, everything from rigging to modeling, you name it. But the idea of sort of simpler built backgrounds using something like The Sims is something that's never actually occurred to me.
Yeah, I used to do it because back in the day when I first started, I could not afford a lot of things. Like, and I know other people struggle with that as well. So I learned how to make emotes. I learned how to make overlays. I made my own sound alerts. I basically did all that just so that I could save myself some money. And then when people were asking me about my background, I decided, I'll just offer it as a cheap alternative for people, because you want something original on your stream. I'll just offer this as an alternative for people who can't afford to get a custom background.
Goodness knows.
Yeah.
Vtuber Talk is built entirely out of cardboard and duct tape. The
feel that.
Just the bars, the city skyline background that I have when the guest doesn't have their own, that you can sort of see it. That's why there's that weird little pink shining thing underneath of the chat box that when I was making this, all right, what is the background of pretty much every late night talk show? It's a city skyline of some sort. So that's what I have. And that was just a royalty-free image that I was able to find on a site. The overlays I have for the starting soon screen, the end screen, the little frame here, these are all royalty-free assets from different places. The only thing that I got custom made, and it wasn't even made until a bit over a month ago now for my first anniversary, that I said, all right, I'm going to pay to have a custom logo made, and that's what you see in the top of the screen there, and what you saw on the beginning screen, the neon one. Those were both done by EROS, who is actually a previous guest of mine. The link for her is down in the channel description if you want to commission her. She does great work.
Yeah,
but
she does.
Since I didn't and still currently do not plan to monetize the stream, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna super invest a lot since I'm not expecting to get anything out either. But that was sort of my first anniversary present to myself of, okay, I want a logo.
I miss Eros. She was one of the first VTuber friends I had.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was one of the first few I collabed with. We lost touch for a while just because both of our lives got so chaotic. But I knew what was going on. We knew what was going on in each other's lives. But we're still friends and stuff, but we don't talk as much as we used to. I love her. She's so awesome.
Yeah. And she's been keeping busy lately, seeing her streaming quite a bit lately, that she's been doing very well, and super happy to see it. Yeah.
She's doing awesome. I'm so proud of her.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that you had that connection. That it's not shocking, I suppose, because the VTuber community, while it's very big, it's also very small. Very small. And that, people interact a lot. And I've been very fortunate in that regard, like I mentioned at the top of the show, of people just doing raids is how I find a lot of my guests, or just that, people will bring up other people in their stream and say, oh, I was talking with so-and-so, and, the classic shout out, which I realize I haven't actually done a single shout out for you all day. I'm so sorry about that. I have the thing in the background, or at the bottom of the screen, but I should actually probably do a given shout out, and just that, you see that in someone's chat and sort of follow the link there and find people that way, because it's a small community, even if it is a very big one at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. It's all right, don't worry.
For yours, so actually, obviously the background you have right here is not one from The Sims. Who did your background?
This was made by Morono. They're on my Twitch profile. Moruno. So they made the background for me, and they were really, really cool to work with.
Yeah, I really like this one, that it's the stars in the draping sort of helps provide that dreamy, celestial type of feel. The colors are very soft, but you have the points of warmth with the lanterns. You have the little elephant pillow stuffed animal right there on the bed. It's very nice.
That's Buddy.
Buddy!
He's Buddy.
He is Buddy.
Yeah, someone named him for me. Mr. Blue named him for me.
Now, speaking of which, I realized I missed a couple of follows a while back. So if you all are still around, it's Noxie, Valentine VT, and Conal Cernak. I'm Conal Cernak. Let me know how to pronounce your name if you're still around. Thank you all so much for the follows. Sorry I lost track of those. Just, dove into the conversation and forgot to check the activity feed. So thank you all for
Valentine is
tuning
cool.
in.
He's one of the reasons I'm streaming.
Oh, really?
Mm.
How does that end happening? Did you see one of their streams and sort of?
No. So we met on VR chat. He likes to say that I stalked him. I didn't. But we met on Connell. Yeah, Connell Karnak. But Val and I met on VR chat one night. He was performing. He does music, so he was performing one night, and I added him, or he added me as a friend. I can't remember. And then he was online one night, and I thought, oh, I wonder what he's up to, because I had nothing else to do. So I jumped in on a world with them, and then I became their friend. And hi. And he was a streamer along with another dear friend called Dizzy J. The two of them were streaming. And I was curious about it, and the two of them were like, "You should do it. You've got the personality for it. Do it." And I was really like, "No, I don't want to." But they pushed me to do it.
Hey, there they are.
They pushed me to do it, and I started as a face streamer, actually a cam streamer. And then I discovered. Well, I was a fan of VTubing, but I discovered how to do it. Which was a big thing. So I discovered how to do it, and then I showed Val, and then he stole VTubing from me. So I stole streaming from him, and he stole VTubing from me.
Well, it's circular at least.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm.
Gosh, we've actually been at this already for almost 2.5 hours. And I know it's much later for you than it is for me. That we're off by a couple hours, because it was 7 GMT when we started, so that means that it's almost 10, and I know you had like a 14-hour shift yesterday, was it?
Yeah, I have another one on Tuesday.
Oh dear. Okay, so is that is it a 1-on 2-off type of thing, or a 2-on 1-off? Because I know
It's
sometimes
just
you
when I'm
have
finishing. I'm finishing this placement, and I just wanted to get some extra hours. I have some extra hours to do, so
Gotcha.
I decided to just cram them into like 2 days. But after this, I have more free time, so yay!
Yay! Are there any things we already mentioned? Game shows that once you start having more free time that you're looking forward to doing, or any games you're looking forward to playing?
Yeah, so I'm looking at bringing back a series that I did on my channel, which was kind of similar to this. It's called the Checkup series. Originally it was Sunday Checkup, but I started doing it other days as well, just because Sunday wasn't useful for a lot of people.
Oh, oops! As we are in the middle of our Sunday show.
Whoopsies. No, it was Sunday for a lot of people was kind of difficult, because a lot of people would take that as their day off kind of thing. So I started just doing it whenever people were available, and it was basically just a mental health talk. It's a way to kind of get to know the VTuber away from their own stream, because on your own stream you can be a bit more careful with what you say, and it's like a lot of people like to hold on to the immersion of VTubing and don't like to talk about what's going on or like how they're feeling kind of thing. And so I created the Checkup series as a way for people to come on and kind of discuss their own experiences with mental health, how they take care of themselves, advice they would give to other people, and just get to know the person on a little bit of a more personal level than what you would generally see on their channel. So my channel is more of a safe space where I've had people come on the channel and talk about like past sexual abuse. Like we get some people, if they're open to it, get very, very deep with it. And so I always have trigger warnings ready, but it's just a way for someone to be more transparent with their own community about like, this is who I really am.
Yeah. And like you said, there is a really good parallel for what I do here, that obviously I don't inherently lean into the mental health aspects, and things usually aren't quite that level of serious, but what I try and provide is that comfortable environment where a guest can just talk about the things that they love and geek out with me, and sometimes teach me things, and that they're not having to worry about other issues of running a stream and just
Yeah.
able to have the circumstance to talk about things that they enjoy that might not inherently come up during a normal stream, not because it's a private thing, but just because nobody's ever happened to ask, or they've been sidetracked with other things and that it's never come up.
Yeah, that's kind of the similar format I go for. It's like you can just talk openly and be relaxed here.
Yeah. And I wonder almost if that talk shows are very different from game shows. And it's the type of thing that I didn't actually grow up watching many talk shows. And I only, I don't think I've ever really kept up with any mainstream talk shows. But for me, I think just seeing a couple here and there, and like I mentioned, that I have this sort of production-minded brain, that's sort of what led to Vtuber Talk happening, I suppose, as opposed to other different ventures that I might have taken. But yeah, and it's really cool that that has been something that you've taken on yourself, and even if it's on a bit of a hiatus because you're very busy right now, it's really cool that you're able to take your expertise and, as I mentioned earlier, just supportive nature and channel it in that way.
Yeah, I don't do it while I'm on a placement because, like, I do it for my job.
Yeah.
So it gets
very
like, so
understandable.
I did it for a while where I was working, and like the guys in the chat will tell you, like Hazel and Val and Envy will say, I was done. I was exhausted, and I was constantly, it really hit on my mental health.
I can't imagine why.
I know, right? So yeah, I had to stop doing it while I'm on a placement. But yeah, I still love it, and I am actually speaking with a couple of people right now about doing it over March. So
ooh, definitely have to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you up too much later, so I just have a couple of last questions before we go. And like I said, we've already been at this for basically 2.5 hours.
It's fine.
I've already asked this in sort of a different way, but do you have any particular goals for 2022 that we're only almost through 2 months now, so there's still a lot of the year left. Obviously, I know one of your IRL goals is graduating, just finishing your studies, which, if memory serves, you will be completing them in June?
July, August time.
Okay, so a bit past the halfway point, and that's something that is definitely on the horizon. Very exciting, because obviously this is something that you've been working years and years and years for. So congratulations to you on that upcoming success. That I know it's a lot of hard work right now, but you're almost at that end, and obviously that end is going to be a new beginning of its own, but a landmark to be sure. In terms of VTubing, though, do you have any particular goals, whether that be certain types of content? Some people have number-based goals. Is there something that you're looking at, or are you just taking it day by day?
Be easier on myself. That's probably the main thing, because especially for those of us who start in 2020, I don't know what's happening, but we're all going through that point where we're like worrying about numbers and worrying about this and that and wanting to be original and da 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 da. And like, I've fallen into that trap loads of times. I just want to stop trying to put too much pressure on myself and like just have fun with it. And if I want to do an idea, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. If it doesn't do well, oh well, I tried. Yeah, just stop expecting too much of myself, really.
And I think it's not super surprising to me that that's where a lot of people find themselves right now, because 2020 was the start of the VTuber boom. I frequently point to, we've talked about catalyst events. I think it's pretty easy to say that the debut of HoloLive English in September of 2020 really was the kickoff of what ended up being a very big boom. That obviously VTubing had been a thing already, but I think that for English audiences, that's what led to a lot of growth for people who were already VTubing, and just led to the growth in the number of VTubers that were active. But for those who got into all of this in 2020, that it's now been a bit over a year, or about a year and a half for a whole chunk of people. And that's usually at the point where you've been in this for a time, and there's a lot of things that either potential for burnout, or that type
Yeah.
of question of, okay, I've been putting in this much effort for this much time, and it's now becoming a significant amount of time, and sort of re-examining, all right, what do I want out of VTubing? That do I want to try and make this a livelihood thing? Do I want to keep it at a smaller scale? And now that you have a year or more's worth of just sort of viewership data saying, all right, how much do I care about numbers, or what do I want to do with the numbers I have? Because you should never put a lot of weight into early numbers, because you don't even have trends. That those are just
Yeah.
a few points. But once you have a year's worth, that's when you can start being a bit more cognizant and, I suppose, productive with the data, assuming you approach it from a healthy mindset. But like you said, it's very easy to fall into a unhealthy mindset at the same time.
Oh yeah, very easy. Way too easy sometimes.
But it's good that you are aware of that yourself, that just the awareness that you might be falling into that mindset is half the battle, I think.
Oh yeah.
And just then being able to fight against it, because a certain amount of it is just human nature of, okay, you want to grow and you want to see how you're doing. That's fine. But being able to balance expectations and reality and have a healthy relationship with your numbers is something that all content creators, regardless of if you're a VTuber, YouTuber, what have you, it's a very important part of making content.
Yeah, I generally say to my chat anyway, because we always do that thing where you're comparing yourself with other people, like, oh, this person started after me and they're already a partner and all that kind of stuff. But like, from the time you're a baby, you're literally being compared. Like, it's always my baby walked first, my baby talked first. It's like, from the moment you're on this earth, you are being compared to everyone. Oh, my baby was this weight, yours was that weight. What the fuck? Like, you're being compared from the second you come into this world. So it is human nature that we're naturally going to grow up comparing ourselves to everyone else around us.
Yeah,
and we just have to learn how to actually work with that and use it as a skill and develop it as a way to our benefit, rather than let ourselves get jealous about stuff.
Yeah, and certainly there's healthy ways and healthy levels of comparison, of figuring out, all right, you know, am this anything from, all right, is there something that I might be doing that is wrong if I'm seeing other people being successful and they're doing this type of thing? And is there something that I'm not doing? Is there a reason I'm not doing it? That there can be reasons to be different and not change a thing. But sometimes you might discover, oh, I can be doing this small thing in my stream and it can improve my numbers, and that doesn't change who I am as a person, as a content creator. That it might be something as simple of the placement of a link, or being cognizant to remind people, hey, hit that follow button every so often, of the that sliding scale of comparison and changes that you can make to yourself and your content, and like I said, finding that healthy balance. So for you, I think that in a nutshell, like you said, just being kinder to yourself and figuring out where things are going to go for you, especially now that once you finish your education, things aren't going to necessarily get less hectic, because then you're potentially going to end up having, you know, a full-time job at a given facility. So that's not going to be jumping around anymore, but that still means you'll probably be busy on some level and figuring out for yourself that new normal of how does everything else fit into place.
It's I'm nervous, but figure out how to use it as a tool to get better, rather than letting the little green monster take over your mind and compare everything in a bad way.
Absolutely. And being nervous, I think, is totally reasonable, especially for someone in your position. Of the act of finishing formalized education is a huge shift, because usually you've been in formal education for the vast majority of your life. So the concept of, oh, I don't have homework anymore, and I don't have to worry about exams in the normal academic sense anymore is very liberating. One, I can definitely tell you that for starters, the school dreams do not end. Does not matter. You will continue to just every so often, speaking of dreams, have that one where you haven't studied for an exam. You're like, how did I forget this exam was a thing? I don't even remember like taking this class. How I'm usually so good in studies. How did this go wrong? Yeah, that still happens to me. Like, it's not frequent, but 2-3 times a year, just the odd wake up and like, oh, I'm not in school anymore. Oh, certainly, at the very least, waking up from those dreams is a delight.
Oh, 1000%. I still think about stuff from back in the day. So, I will be excited to be done with this, to be honest.
Indeed. Bad Bussum, thank you for the follow.
Bad Bussy. Sorry.
You're fine. You're
I'm
fine.
tired. That came out of nowhere. I do that sometimes. I'm sorry. I've lasted 2.5 hours without doing it. I'm allowed.
Trust me. If you've seen the full list of people I have had on this channel, I have had way worse. It is fine.
Okay.
The rating of Vtuber Talk slides entirely with the guest. That is something I've been very adamant about since day one of just, don't worry about it. You are fine.
When I'm on other people's channels, except for like my best friends, if I'm on someone else's channel, I'm like on my best behavior. But if people come over to my chat, I literally would have welcomed them as bad pussy. Like,
no, I honestly, like that's my fault as a host. I usually make a point of telling my guests, by the way, just be yourself, be relaxed. The channel is labeled as mature, just perpetually, just that way. There is the flexibility, and that it is totally fine to just let loose. So if anything, I'm kind of glad that we had that little moment there.
Can I say something to your chat then that will like, describe my streams pretty perfectly?
Please, absolutely.
Chat, you're a bunch of little bottom shits. Go fuck yourself. There you go.
Dang it. I'm so sorry I forgot to tell you to just, relax and let loose earlier, because it makes me wonder if the last 2.5 hours would have had even crazier twists and turns. But at the very least, I'm glad that we're able to have this here and now.
Well, when I'm talking about things that I'm really into, I do get really focused on it. So it's hard for me to properly like let go. She does love to rinse us. You just love to be stepped on, you little bitch. Shut the fuck up, Connell.
And there you have it.
That's more what my stream is like.
Oh, goodness. I hope that people who watch the VOD watch to the end just to have these moments here.
Just clip it. Just put a little clip at the start of me just going, "You're a little bottom bitch, go fuck yourself."
That's one of the things that as a content creator I'm not very good about, is that I don't really edit my stuff, but maybe I will. I'm not sure. Or maybe I'll just get a clip of this and post it on Twitter or something.
Just do a little clip at the start, like, if you've watched, this is the shit that she gets.
Yeah, you need that hook at the front end of the show. Just pull people in.
There's my emo. Yeah, they asked for that emo.
Yes. Oh goodness. Yeah, because we've seen your emotes in chat throughout the day. I don't think that one had actually been used quite yet.
That is a exclusive for people who give bits.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I have to have more. I need to think of more.
And here come more emotes. Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, Hazel.
I love the pumpkin dance one. That was when I was playing a game with Valentine. There was just me in the background just jamming out.
I'm just bringing it up and seeing the Zoom version. There we go. Yeah. And then the dance. There we go. Yes. Very fun ones indeed. And the last question I ask all my guests is, what does being a VTuber mean to you? And that's not what is the definition of a VTuber, but to you, Taroh, what does it mean to be a VTuber? Some guests have a very sort of clinical approach of, it is a mask that I wear, it's a tool in my arsenal as a content creator. Others have a very personal connection with it. And, you know, some people say it lets me be someone or something I can't be in real life, or it lets me get in touch with my inner child. And all of those answers and everything in between and beyond are valid. But to you, Taroh, what does it mean to be a VTuber?
To me, it means two things. Number one, I don't have to care about the faces I'm pulling. I am very expressive in my facial expressions, and I don't have to worry about that all the time, which is fucking great. And number two, it's also the anonymity for me, because my identity was out there, like there are parts of me that are out there, but if I was very upfront with who I was, I wouldn't be able to really do my job. If I want to do my job properly, I wouldn't be able to stream as a face streamer. So VTubing gives me that ability. That's
really cool. Of just, I hadn't thought of it necessarily from that angle until you said it, and that's part of why I asked that question, because everyone has a different answer, and I never know what someone's going to say, but it always makes sense when they say it. And for you in particular, because as we've talked about your profession several times today, that the fact that the anonymity here isn't just a matter of comfort, but it is a matter of professional sort of security, I suppose, that I can see how being a face streamer would be hazardous in your line of work.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the people I work with. Yeah, it's a security measure on that side. But for the most part, it just means I can just act the way I want and just not have to worry about how things could be taken. Also, I can stream in my pajamas with no makeup on. It's fucking brilliant.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's definitely something that a lot of people say, of just the freedom to, I don't need to worry about what I look like. I don't need to worry about what I'm wearing. I can just be comfortable, and that obviously helps people stream better. Just when you're comfortable, that you're going to be yourself, that you're going to be happier and have a better time.
Actually, just straight out of bed. Like, I've gotten out of bed, went, fuck! Went live, and like, I'm just talking to chat, and it's like, I just got out of bed, guys. I'm so sorry.
But like, nobody needs to know that.
Oh yeah, Hazel, I never wear pants. I never wear pants when I stream.
Oh yes, it's a meme, but it's also the truth.
It's very much the truth. No makeup, no pants.
Oh goodness, this has been super fun, Tara. I hope you've enjoyed it. That one of the things I say is that I recognize I'm not a very big streamer, and anytime somebody comes on my show, it is a gift of their time, because this is time that you could be spending either on your own channel or just relaxing or something. So the one thing that I can offer and that I do my best to offer is a fun time on the show. So I hope that you've had a fun time today. I know I have. Thank you to everyone from Hazel's chat. Sorry, not Hazel's chat, Taroh's chat. Goodness, I'm looking over at the chat and saying, I'm looking at the chat, seeing Hazel's name, and then it just comes out and I was like, dang it.
We're that closely associated now, Hazel.
Well, I guess of all the people for me to accidentally say, at least I said Hazel. Could have been worse.
So Hazel and Vtuber Talk win, and then you can start calling her Taroh.
There we go, yep. Oh dear. Well, as we start to wind down, is there anyone that you would like us to raid?
Yes.
Awesome. If you could either send me their name in Discord or just here in the Twitch chat, that I'm going to... The auto mod caught something, and I'm going to allow it. I'm going to deny it. But I'm only going to deny it because I don't want the auto mod. Basically, it's fine, Hazel. That Hazel just said she's a cunt, and I would allow that because it's Hazel. I am saying no to it because I don't want the term added to the whitelist on auto mod, because I don't want people in the future coming in and not meaning it.
One?
Yes.
Wow, yeah, English bastard. Fuck off.
So Hazel, I know you mean it with love. I only do that because AutoMod wouldn't be able to tell that in the future.
Yeah. That's alright. I love you, Envy. I love you, Hazel. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
So let's see here. So Kel.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce this?
Karen Yu, he's one of my bestie friends. I love him. He's having a hard time right now, so I want to give him some love.
All right, definitely. Well, I'm going to give...
Hazel's his daddy.
Oh, neat. And that's the other thing of being in the VTuber community. You can say that, and I understand entirely what you mean. And it's not weird at all. But to someone who doesn't know VTubing, that would probably sound very strange.
It's Hazel's son. So yeah, I want to give him all the love. He's having a hard time right now. So.
But we're definitely going to want to pass on the positivity. So I'm going to be wrapping stuff up in just a moment. I have a bit of an outro screen, but then we'll be rating in. So be sure to spam Taroh's emotes if you got them. Please send them all of the love, all the support. I'm going to make sure I have this right. KELRENYIL. Because OBS does this quirky thing where I can't paste things in. So KELYIL. Yes, cool, awesome. So I've got that queued up. But thank you to everyone who has tuned in live or is watching on YouTube after the fact. I'm Jay. This is Vtuber Talk. Taroh, you've been an amazing guest. This has been so much fun. People can follow me here on Twitch, on YouTube, on Twitter, if you are so inclined. But even if you're not going to follow me, be sure to follow Taroh. She is a wonderful, wonderful person, and there is so much more to come for sure. So a lot of things to look forward to. Keep an eye on her. She does amazing stuff, and this is obviously only scratching the surface here today. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed chat. I hope you enjoyed Taroh. Thank you again.
So, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So everybody have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll be rating in just a moment, but I will see you all next time. I've got another guest lined up for next week. It's going to be great as always. I hope you'll tune in again. So thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.